Chapter 701, Rank 3 Airsac Gu. 8 desolate beasts encircled closer to He Feng Yang and Fairy Xianxia. They are all real. Fairy Xianxia had extremely outstanding investigative methods to check the situation, but the result caused her pretty face to blanch further. He Feng Yang looked around him and saw. To the east was an ice-spiked divine ape whose bulk was only somewhat inferior to Dang Hun Mountain. A tyrannical aura spread out from it, and as it moved, it left behind a pure white icy trail. The fur on its whole body were like ice cones which brought a stifling pressure upon the two immortals. The sclera of its eyes were jade green, while its pupils had a frost blue luster. This represented the dense bloodline in this ice-spiked divine ape. If the eyeballs were completely frost blue in color, that would be the ancient desolate beast, Icefall divine ape, whose battle strength was comparable to a rank 7 Gu immortal. To the west floated a phoenix feather lava crocodile. This crocodile was 2 to 3 times the size of ordinary crocodiles and could not compare to the enormously huge ice-spiked divine ape, yet its aura surged mightily. Its every breath brought a scalding hot heat wave. Its brownish-red scale armor was thick and robust, and its slender tail was over 6 meters long. It did not have any scales on its back but instead had colorful phoenix feathers that resembled blazing lava. To the north stood a proud golden sand dark stallion. This horse was huge, its size reaching the chest of the ice-spiked divine ape. It had 6 legs that looked like they were cast from metal, its muscles were bulging, its posture was proud and aloof like a dragon, and its whole body shone with a golden luster. Only the 6 hooves were pitch black. The south side was entrenched by an azure dragon vine. This vine was not a wild beast, strictly speaking, but a plant. The vines had condensed into a dragon shape, and when its roots were pierced into the soil, its defensive and regenerative powers were extremely terrifying, thus it specialized in battles of attrition. If it pulled out the roots, it could soar in the sky like an azure dragon. On the southeast side was a swamp crab. It was the king of swampy terrain. Its broad, mountain-like body could reach up to a quarter of Dang Hun Mountain's height when standing. Its eyes had degenerated till they were non-existent, and its shell was so thick that He Feng Yang felt a powerless sensation, like he was facing a tortoise shell. It had altogether 19 pairs of legs, and its front pair of pincers could easily crush boulders and cut dragons. Even Feng Yuan with his immortal zombie body did not dare to test the might of this pair of pincers. A peach wolf was crouching down on the northeast. This wolf had the smallest size, the same as that of a newborn puppy. It looked extremely good-natured and cute with its round body, plump claws, pink tongue and round dark eyes. Judging from appearance, it seemed to be harmless to both man and beast. However, He Feng Yang's pupils shrunk, and if he had to choose a direction to break through, he would avoid this one outright. An iron crown eagle circled over the northwest side. This eagle gave off a valiant and imposing aura as it hovered in the air, its eyes locked onto He Feng Yang and Fairy Xianxia. Its wings were broad and thick, and each of its feathers could be shot out like sharp arrows. Its claws were firm and savage, able to crush boulders and rip apart dragons and tigers. Finally, on the southwest side stood an earth chief desolate beast. It had a humanoid body with a snake tail, its face resembled a bat's and its nose was pointed up. It had large ears and was black all over, with armor made of flesh covering it. Around its chest were 50 to 60 fleshy whips, each over 20 meters in length. There were suction organs on the surface of the fleshy whips. It would be hard to free oneself if someone was entangled by them. At the front of each fleshy whip was a chrysanthemum-like orifice which could shoot out a white milky fluid at the crucial moment. The fluid had very high corrosiveness and contained extremely large numbers of parasitic worms, which could drill into the pores of people and wreak havoc from inside the body. Feng Yuan had borrowed these 8 desolate beasts from Xianxia land spirit. More accurately, it should be said that Feng Yuan borrowed Xianxia land spirit's rank 7 beast enslavement Gu. This immortal Gu could subdue all kinds of wild beasts, including mutated beasts, myriad beast kings, beast emperors, even desolate beasts and ancient desolate beasts. Desolate beasts had the power of a rank 6 Gu immortal and could be very difficult to deal with when the wild Gu residing on them were unknown. 8 desolate beasts encircled He Feng and Fairy Xianxia, eyeing them with greed. The two sank into silence with no signs of a leisurely attitude like before. He Feng turned his heavy gaze towards the peak of Dang Hun Mountain. Compared to the 8 desolate beasts, the true threat was still Feng Yuan and the other 3 immortals. Almost no desolate beasts could use killer moves, but Gu immortals had ample wisdom to use and research killer moves. He Feng heart had sunk into rock bottom. He forcibly calmed down and shouted towards Feng Yuan, "Who are all of you?" Except Feng Yuan, the other 3 immortals were wearing masks. He Lulan wore a black bear mask, Fairy Li Shan wore a blue bird mask, while Tai Baiyun Sheng wore a deer mask. The 3 were also shrouded in a layer of light that concealed their true appearance, hiding it from the investigative methods of He Feng and Fairy Xianxia. Feng Yuan chuckled, "Before asking us of our identities, shouldn't you two introduce yourselves first?" He Feng and Fairy Xianxia silently glanced at each other, and saw the bitter look in each other's eyes. They had thought this trip would be simple, and at worst, they thought the other side would possess a Gu immortal's battle strength. However, they absolutely had not anticipated the enemy force would be this strong. Thus, they had been arrogant and directly requested Feng Yuan to surrender without giving self-introductions. "My name is He Feng, a rank 6 enslavement path Gu immortal of Immortal Crane sect. I am Xianxia, a rank 6 water path Gu immortal of Immortal Crane sect." The two introduced themselves one after the other. Their attitude was no longer as overbearing as earlier, they were behaving very humbly at the moment. A wise man submits to circumstances. Those who could become Gu immortals were outstanding people. At present, Feng Yuan had an imposing force. He Feng and Xianxia decisively lowered their high heads. It might be easy to defeat Gu immortals, but killing them was difficult. He Feng could use expand space immortal Gu to tear a hole in Hu immortal blessed land space and escape. However, they did not know Feng Yuan's abilities. If Feng Yuan had an immortal Gu that could prevent their escape, the situation would become dangerous. "So it is brother He and Fairy Xianxia." Feng Yuan's tone was polite. "I am Feng Yuan and I welcome you two as guests in my blessed land." These polite words felt grating when He Feng and Xianxia heard them. It was full of sarcasm. He Feng could not help but feel stifled. You updates. TN. vel/by.com. What he had asked for was clearly these people's true identities, but Feng Yuan played dumb and gave an irrelevant answer by only replying with his name. Right now, who in Central Continent's 10 great sects would not know of his name? Feng Yuan intentionally avoided this topic, and He Feng, as the weaker side, did not dare to pursue it. "I wonder what both of you are here for?" Feng Yuan asked. He Feng was silent, but inwardly he was screaming insults. "What else could we come for? It is to take Hu immortal blessed land and capture Dang Hun Mountain. This brat, asking when he already knows." Fairy Xianxia snorted. "Why is Sir speaking in such a weird and sarcastic tone? Sir's power surpassed everyone's imagination. When did such a force appear in Central Continent? Today was our loss. Sir's planning skills are indeed excellent and have fully controlled the situation. Now what should we do? If you want to battle, then let us begin. Why waste time chit-chatting? We will battle to the end if you wish to. In the worst case, our blood will splatter all over and we will perish here." Feng Yuan could not help but take another look at Fairy Xianxia upon hearing these words. Shortly afterwards he smiled. Fairy, you are quite brave, I am filled with admiration. I can roughly guess your intentions in coming here, it should be for Dang Hun Mountain's Guts Gu, right? You are right. He Feng Yang frankly admitted. Under the circumstances, he had no choice but to admit it, the scheme which he had painstakingly devised and prepared for over a year in order to capture Hu Immortal Blessed Land had already completely failed. However, right at this time, he could not help but have some hope. If Fang Yuan wanted to battle, he should have started already. But he has been talking up to this point, it seems he is afraid of Immortal Crane's sect. As long as I use this correctly, maybe we can escape without any accidents. Fang Yuan suddenly clapped and smiled, you two came in at just the right time, I had already been thinking of selling Guts Gu. What do you think of this Gu? A rank 3 Gu worm flew out of his hand. The Gu worm slowly flew under the gazes of 6 Gu immortals, 8 desolate beasts as well as the blue charm lightning shadow, and landed in He Feng Yang's hand. He Feng Yang was uncertain and worried of Fang Yuan's scheme as he carefully accepted this mortal Gu. This rank 3 Gu worm resembled a ladybug. It was the size of a large bowl, its head was extremely small while its stomach was so big that it occupied 99% of its body. Its stomach was round like a lamp bulb and was translucent. It did not have a carapace on its back and also did not have wings. In its translucent stomach, there was a Gu. A Gu within a Gu. Fairy Xianxia softly mumbled. This rank 3 mortal Gu was clearly a storage Gu worm, particularly with the purpose of storing Gu worms. These types of storage Gu worms were extremely common, it included examples like Earth Treasury Flower. However, the Gu worm inside the belly made He Feng Yang's gaze fix on it as if it was glued. He then said with uncertain eyes, this Gu inside, could it be Guts Gu? Fang Yuan gave a bright smile, that is exactly right. What? Fairy Xianxu's beautiful eyes widened in astonishment. She might know very little about Guts Gu, but she knew Guts Gu could not be taken out of Dang Hun Mountain, if taken out, they would dissipate. It was because of this that Fang Yuan was not willing to trade Guts Gu before. Because if others wanted to use Guts Gu, they would have to personally come to Dang Hun Mountain. And letting so many outsiders enter Hu Immortal Blessed Land would no doubt be a huge threat to Fang Yuan's life. This was the reason Central Continent's 10 great ancient sects wanted to seize Dang Hun Mountain. Guts Gu could not be taken out of Dang Hun Mountain, thus taking control of Dang Hun Mountain meant being in control of Guts Gu. However, the fact right in front on them showed that Guts Gu could actually be stored and taken out of Dang Hun Mountain. Fairy Xianxia soon recognized how much significance this unremarkable ladybug-like Gu worm carried, for a moment, her eyes were tightly affixed to it. This Gu worm, what is its name? He Feng Yang looked up at Fang Yuan and asked with a slightly trembling tone. Fang Yuan had in truth not thought of a name, and casually named it at this moment, Airsack Gu. He Feng Yang sank into silence. In an instant, he thought of many things. Immortal Crane's sect's higher-ups had also made these attempts. Back then, many Gu immortals had participated but it ended up in failure. Now, success was in He Feng Yang's hand. He Feng Yang's hands shivered slightly. If Guts Gu could be taken out of Dang Hun Mountain and exported to all places, Treasure Yellow Heaven, Haishur Blessed Land, Central Continent, Southern Border, Northern Plains, how big of a profit would this be? Something that even our Immortal Crane sect could not research was successfully accomplished by the force behind Fang Yuan. What are their origins? Maybe they had planned for a long time and thought of every means to capture Hu Immortal Blessed Land, in order to engage in the business of Guts Gu. Fang Yuan did not attack, could it be that he wants to, with our immortal crane sect. He Feng Yang was still considering when Fang Yuan spoke, since both guests are interested in my Guts Gu, what do you think of doing this transaction? He Feng Yang's heart wavered. Chapter 702, Accident, Assault of a Mysterious Gu Immortal. Fang Yuan's suggestion moved He Feng Yang's heart. When Fang Yuan launched the ambush and encircled He Feng Yang, he had thought that this operation was going to end in failure. In the best-case scenario, he would use Expand Space Immortal Gu and break out of the encirclement forcefully after sustaining huge injuries. Even if he consumed a lot of immortal essence during the process of escaping, he could not care about it. After all, comparing immortal essence and his life, the latter was much more important. After returning to Immortal Crane Sect, He Feng Yang's life would definitely go downhill. Immortal Crane Sect placed such great expectations on him, and he had even prepared for over a year, but he ended up failing. His rival, Gu Immortal Lei Tan, would definitely seek him out to mock him personally when he hears the news. Second Supreme Elder would be utterly disappointed with him, and He Feng Yang might not be able to lift his head for several years after that. This loss could be a lifelong blemish. Solely with just this failure, he would be mocked by countless people in the dark forever. If he could establish the deal with Fang Yuan for Guts Gu, to He Feng Yang, that would be many times better than breaking through the encirclement. He Feng Yang assessed in his heart, Gu Immortal Blessed Land has 4 Gu Immortals and 8 desolate beasts, together with the territorial advantage, they are as secure as a fortress. Even though any of the 10 great ancient sects have the capability to take this on, that is only speaking of capability. They might not be able to gather so many Gu Immortals here. Even if they could send Gu Immortals to attack Gu Immortal Blessed Land, a battle between Gu Immortals will expend a great amount of immortal essence and other resources. Even if they could get enough manpower and invest a lot into this battle, the other party also has Gu Immortals and can easily destroy Dang Hun Mountain. By then, even if Gu Immortal Blessed Land was obtained, it would all be for nothing. In the outside world, Great Heavenly Sword Sect had 3 Gu Immortals, and could attempt to leave one of the 10 great ancient sects, Immortal Crane Sect. This was because to deal with 3 Gu Immortals, the resources and manpower needed were something Immortal Crane Sect needed to consider. If they failed, not only would they suffer a loss in their reputation, this huge loss might also cause unrest within the sect, and trigger other problems. Gu Immortals were easy to defeat, but they were hard to kill. Why would anyone who could reach this stage not have any means or trump cards to escape? If they failed to kill him, they would utterly offend a Gu Immortal. A Gu Immortal that is holding grudges may cause trouble to mortals. With Immortal Crane Sect's huge size and wide range of assets, they would have to salvage the situation everywhere. Now that Fang Yuan has displayed such a force, Immortal Crane Sect alone could no longer attack forcefully, unless the other sects cooperated with them. But if they cooperated, there would be issues in many aspects, regarding the allocation of benefits. If He Feng Yang agrees to cooperate with Fang Yuan, they would establish trade for Guts Gu. This result was not an utter failure. That was because Immortal Crane Sect's main objective in taking down Gu Immortal Blessed Land was for the Guts Gu. Using the smallest price to obtain the biggest benefits, this was the issue that all of the Supreme Elders in Immortal Crane Sect were concerned about. Before this, Immortal Crane Sect had already requested for Fang Yuan to initiate the sales of Guts Gu. If we could establish a trade with the other party, I would not need to force my way out and risk injury. I can save a lot of immortal essence and have a proper justification when I return to the sect. He Feng Yang considered this option. Fang Yuan observed his expression. Even though He Feng Yang was a shrewd man and did not show emotions on his face, he was clearly moved due to how long he was considering this for. Thus, Fang Yuan continued, 100 of my Guts Gu will sell for 1 immortal essence stone in Treasure Yellow Heaven. I will sell 120 Guts Gu to Immortal Crane Sect for each immortal essence stone. However, in return, I want your immortal crane sect to acknowledge my Who immortal blessed land as your sect's subsidiary force. Furthermore, this subsidiary can detach from you at any time. As long as he had this identity, the other 9 great ancient sects would not be able to deal with Fang Yuan without involving Immortal Crane sect. These were the rules of the righteous path. It was like making Immortal Crane sect the big boss, while Who immortal blessed land was the lackey. You would need to ask the boss before hitting his lackeys. He Feng Yang smiled insincerely as he spoke. Fang Yuan, are you thinking of using my sect as your protection? With your force, you can definitely establish your own sect, right? Nobody can set up a sect on Tian Mountain. I have no intention to leave this valuable spot. Fang Yuan laughed. Tian Mountain had directly connected to Heavenly Court. Even Gu immortals did not dare to fight on this mountain. If Immortal Crane sect did not declare Fang Yuan as a sect traitor and hold perfect reason to take him down, they would not dare to attack Who immortal blessed land. Furthermore, Who immortal blessed land becoming Immortal Crane sect's subsidiary will also account for your sect's reputation, right? Fang Yuan continued. He Feng Yang fell into silence again. A long while later, he sighed out, this matter is very important, I cannot be in charge of the decision, allow me to return and report to the sect. Fang Yuan nodded, it would be best if brother he goes and explains it. But Fairy Xianxia would need to remain as a guest here for a while longer. Discover EW chapters at novelby.co. He Feng Yang and Xianxia made eye contact. Fairy Xianxia said, Lord Feng Yang, go ahead and return, I will wait here. I will return quickly. He Feng Yang nodded solemnly at her, before looking deeply at Fang Yuan and his gang. He wanted to engrave these people into the depths of his heart. Land Spirit, open the door and let brother he out. Fang Yuan said with a concerned tone. Yes, master. Little Who immortal quickly replied. On Tian Mountain, a brilliant white gold light formed. In the light, a bright red door appeared, it was over 30 meters tall, and there was a rainbow-colored plaque. Pink clouds gathered as the aurora condensed into a flight of stairs of light. He Feng Yang came out of the door. When he left, it was through the proper exit of the blessed land. This action quickly attracted the attention of the Gu immortals of the other 9 great sects. They started to converse. He's out. So fast. Don't tell me there was no resistance at all. When he Feng Yang entered, he used the expand space immortal Gu, but when he came out, it was through the main entrance. This is proof that he succeeded. Something's wrong, look at his face, there is no joy of victory, he looks more calm and composed instead. Even though they were suspicious, none of them asked him directly. This was a hidden contest between the 10 great sects, a direct confrontation was damaging to their reputations. He Feng Yang could not care about their feelings, he only wanted to return to Fei He Mountain, to report this matter. He flew quickly, traveling far from Tian Mountain in a moment's time. He Feng Yang's brows were locked, he was indignant and suspicious, where did Fang Yuan's force come from? Other than Fang Yuan, the other 3 immortals all covered their faces with masks, and used Gu worms to block investigative methods, they evidently do not want to expose their identities. Why is that? Don't tell me they are Gu immortals from the other 9 sects. They did not want our sect to obtain Dang Hun Mountain, thus they secretly colluded with Fang Yuan beforehand. The moment he thought of this, he Feng Yang rejected this possibility. Paper could not cover up a fire, secrets were temporary and would be outed, the 9 great sects would not do such a thing, it was against the demeanor of one of the great sects. Then, are they Gu immortals gathered from Central Continent's smaller sects? He Feng Yang thought. Central Continent had countless sects. Other than the 10 great ancient sects, there were large-sized sects, middle-sized sects, small-sized sects, and mini-sections. There were untold numbers of sects. Within them, there naturally were some Gu immortals. If it had been them, then these Gu immortal would all have foundations in Central Continent. To prevent their home sect from being suppressed or troubled by the ancient sects, they would not want to reveal their identities. That made sense. That's right, Fang Yuan has the fixed immortal travel immortal Gu. These people might not be Central Continent Gu immortals, they might be from other regions. The stronger the Gu immortal, the harder it is to get past the regional walls. Every once in a while, they have to let out their aperture in the region that they became an immortal to recollect and gather heaven and earth qi to stabilize the blessed land. But with fixed immortal travel, the other party can settle these problems easily. He Feng Yang's thoughts moved swiftly. He quickly guessed Fang Yuan and the other Gu immortals' identities. But he had too little evidence, he could not confirm it. All in all, Gu immortal blessed land is very mysterious and dangerous. Before we find out their secrets, we cannot strike easily. This time, I suffered a huge loss. The root of the problem was that the enemy was in the dark while I was out in the open. We suffered from a lack of intel. He Feng Yang concluded his experience from this incident, but he suddenly stopped in the air. Who is this? You dare to ambush me here? He Feng Yang quickly became alert, shouting. You are very vigilant. A voice came from somewhere. It was high and low-pitched at times, with a hoarse male voice that turned into a crisp female voice. Someone had evidently modified their voice with Gu worms. Two figures appeared, one in front and one behind. They blocked He Feng Yang's paths. What changed next was the sky. The bright, shiny and clear sky with no clouds turned dark and eerie. Fog became thick as vengeful souls flew all over the place. This was a battlefield killer move. This was a battlefield environment created to amplify the effects of certain Gu worms. This was not something ordinary Gu immortals could have. I am Immortal Crane Sex He Feng Yang. Both of you are concealing your appearances and acting so secretive. What is your intention? He Feng Yang shouted. The two Gu immortals before him were masked in a layer of dark light. Their appearances could not be seen. So what if you are from Immortal Crane sect? The mysterious Gu immortal in front of him laughed coldly. The Gu immortal behind him said directly, we will kill you regardless. Just as they said that, the Gu immortal struck. 5 fingers spread open and thousands of gray-white threads appeared from the palm. The threads got close to He Feng Yang. As his heart jumped. This was obviously a mortal killer move designed to trap people. Once he was entangled by these threads, it would be difficult to escape. He Feng Yang quickly summoned the crane group. Within his immortal aperture, there were large numbers of flying cranes. He brought them with him everywhere and he never lacked any troops. The crane groups were huge in numbers. There were iron beak flying cranes, fire pellet cranes, tailwind cranes, cloud mist cranes, stellar light cranes, and illusion lightning cranes all mixed together in perfect harmony, forming a tight formation. A desolate beast 9 palace crane flew out, crying out and causing the surrounding fog to disperse. He Feng Yang stepped onto the 9 palace crane's back. His hair was fluttering as his gaze was like lightning. The anger within him had awakened. Do you really think I am an easy target? Today, you will taste the fury of the winged crane flying immortal. As the threads flew to him, the iron beak flying crane group flew out and blocked them with their bodies. The other mysterious Gu immortal puffed up his cheeks and blew out huge flames. These flames were pale green, and in this battlefield, their power was amplified, causing many cranes to fall from the sky after getting burnt. He Feng Yang was not to be outdone. He activated his enslavement path killer move. Immediately, a group of illusion lightning cranes flew out, shooting lightning bolts that gathered and formed into a pillar, piercing the battlefield. Another group of fire pellet cranes flew out, their bodies covered in flames, burning their enemies. Two groups of flying cranes charged towards the two mysterious Gu immortals like a pair of giant fists. Boom boom boom. With an intense explosion, the two sides engaged in intense battle. Chapter 703, Plot Within Plot, a Fatal Killer Move. On the battlefield, the intense battle continued. A large group of iron-beak flying cranes, each with bodies black as steel, they had increased defense and did not fear death, they charged towards the two mysterious Gu immortals fiercely. One of the two mysterious Gu immortals opened their mouth, as a loud sound came out of it, echoing everywhere. This was a sound path killer move. The iron-beak flying crane group's formation went into chaos under the effect of the sound, their tight formation became loose and there were many weaknesses exposed. Go! The other mysterious Gu immortal saw a chance and grabbed the other person's limb, the two of them turning into two lumps of gray-white flames, piercing the iron-beak flying crane's formation and moving towards Xianxia. Against an enslavement path Gu immortal, one should not fight intensely with their beast group. Taking down the enslavement Gu immortal was the proper battle tactic. Xianxia saw that the enemy was approaching, not only was he not anxious, he showed a cold smile, "You fell into my trap." He took out a 5-hole jade flute Gu, placing it near his mouth and started playing the flute. He looked like a green-clothed young man, but he was actually the lord of myriads of beasts. His sleeves fluttered in the air despite having no wind, his eyes burst out with a lively brilliance. Enslavement path killer move, 8-sided ambush. Tens of thousands of flying cranes moved with his music, groups of invisible cranes that had hidden their figures exposed themselves, encircling the two mysterious Gu immortals tightly. Xianxia purposely left behind an empty space in the formation around himself, that was a trap to lead his enemies right into it. Now that the other party had fallen for it, he did not let them off, as his flute continued to play, 3 5-string zither Gu flew out of his body. Amidst the music of the flute, the zither played a crisp tune, turning into another enslavement path killer move, formation like water. Innumerable flying cranes flew outward, while countless flying cranes flew towards the center. The entire battlefield was like a perfect harmony of churning gears, the scale was massive but orderly, the flying cranes moved fluidly, their formation was changing like the flow of water. The two mysterious Gu immortals were within this formation, they saw the array of flying cranes changing their formation smoothly, they felt like beans in a stone grinder, about to be turned into pulp. Xianxia continued to blow the flute, safely at the center of the beast group. Standing on the back of the desolate crane, he watched the crane group engage with the two mysterious experts. He thought in his heart, ever since we started fighting, these two have used countless killer moves, ranging from sound path, space path, fire path, wind path, light path, dark path, rule path and more. They were doing this on purpose, they did not want to use their real abilities and expose their identities. When Gu masters become immortals, according to the foundation of their bodies, as well as the Gu worm used to create their immortal aperture, they would be classified into Gu immortals of their respective paths. There were fire path Gu immortals, wind path Gu immortals, wisdom path Gu immortals and many others, forming the immortal bodies of the respective paths. The immortal body is obtained when a Gu masters ascends, their body will be modified by the 3 qi, removing all impurities and elevating the essence of their life itself. A wind path immortal body will have the Tao marks and comprehension of wind, thus when they use wind path Gu worms, the effect would be greater. A fire path immortal body would be cleansed by the great Tao in relation to fire, it would be closely connected to fire path, and would cause fire path killer moves to be much more powerful than normal. For example, Fang Yuan, although he was an immortal zombie, he was still a strength path Gu immortal, his body was the strength path immortal body, thus when he used Gu worms and killer moves of other paths, the effects were only ordinary. The two mysterious Gu immortals trying to kill He Feng Yang did not use their real fighting methods, therefore, they were suppressed by him despite outnumbering him 2-1. Are you two still trying to conceal your identities? If you do not use your true abilities, you might die here. He Feng Yang snickered continuously, his voice filled the battlefield. The two mysterious Gu immortals were breathing roughly, the attack of the crane groups were unceasing and furious like a tide, the two of them were tired from dealing with them. Like what He Feng Yang said, if the two did not start using their real methods, they would truly get killed soon. The two made eye contact as they nodded, making up their minds. One of them sighed, as expected of a reputed righteous sect. The might of the winged crane flying immortal, I have truly seen it today. The other said, however, even if we do not use our real capabilities, we can still kill you. He Feng Yang, take a look around you. Oh. He Feng Yang's gaze quickly swept the surroundings. Originally, it was a foggy scene, the battlefield was full of crying and anguished screams, but now there was a change. Within the lumps of thick fog, dark blue soul beasts were formed. In just a few breaths of time, the number of soul beasts increased greatly, they were equally numbered with He Feng Yang's crane group. Is this, Soul Taker battlefield? He Feng Yang's heart jumped, he said it subconsciously. He, winged crane flying immortal, you are very knowledgeable. The mysterious Gu immortals laughed, their voices changing constantly, sounding like male or female at times. He Feng Yang's expression turned grim. This Soul Taker battlefield killer move had a vile reputation, it was very hard to deal with. Living beings who died in this battlefield would have their souls taken and transformed into soul beasts, under the control of the killer move's user. Most importantly, this battlefield killer move's origin was huge, it was created by one of the 10 venerables in history when he was young, spectral soul demon venerable who had the most murderous nature. Who were these two mysterious Gu immortals? They actually had a battlefield killer move, Soul Taker, that was long lost in history. Once the soul beasts appeared, they started fighting with the crane groups. The battle situation changed. He Feng Yang quickly manipulated the crane groups, changing formations to defend against the soul beasts. The two mysterious Gu immortals felt less pressure now, and were able to rush out of the crane group's encirclement. The size of the soul beasts was the same as the crane group, but they could not defeat the cranes. Often, 10 soul beasts were sacrificed to kill one crane. But He Feng Yang became increasingly alert in his heart. After the soul beasts were shredded into fragments, these fragments could form into new soul beasts in this Soul Taker battlefield. Meanwhile, when a flying crane dies, its soul would be taken by the battlefield, forming a soul beast, becoming part of the enemy's troops. No matter how high He Feng Yang's cultivation was, he could not battle with 0 casualties. Once he suffered losses, over a long period, the soul beasts would have the upper hand. As this dragged on, He Feng Yang's advantage would dwindle, the crane groups would slowly be taken down by the soul beasts. He Feng Yang, just so you know, we expressed weakness earlier on purpose, to delay for time. Now that the Soul Taker battlefield has grown to a sizable amount, your enslavement path advantage is gone. Winged crane flying immortal, today, you will perish here. The two mysterious Gu immortal work together. Wind path killer move, tornado dragon whip. With a wind whip that was hundreds of meters long, one of the Gu immortals swung, killing countless flying cranes. Poison path killer move, killer bee stab. Thousands of needles rained down like a torrential storm, the poison on them were very potent, any flying crane that was hit directly died on the spot, their flesh disintegrating. The two mysterious Gu immortals had finally showed their true abilities. One was a wind path Gu immortal, while the other was a poison path Gu immortal. Large numbers of cranes were exterminated, their souls were extracted by the battlefield, forming new batches of soul beasts. Oh no, the enemy came prepared, they planned for this long ago, I cannot stay here. Yang saw this and wanted to retreat. Only a fool would want to stay in the Soul Taker battlefield and fight it out with the enemy. This Soul Taker battlefield is filled with fog, it is easy to lose one's direction, it is hard to escape from. But right now, I have Expand Space Immortal Gu with me, it should not be hard to escape from here. Yang thought about this and used his divine sense to communicate with a will in his immortal aperture. This will was in the form of a burly man. When Yang left Fei Mountain earlier, it had entered his immortal aperture and had been observing the outside situation using his Gu worms. All of Yang's experience this time, since he left Fei Mountain, in Hu immortal blessed land, when he was encircled by Fang Yuan and the others, and after he left Hu immortal blessed land and was trapped in the Soul Taker battlefield, attacked by two mysterious Gu immortals. The will saw it all clearly. Yang requested, Lord Tiger Demon, please use your immortal killer move once again to break out of the battlefield and escape this place. This will belong to Immortal Crane Sect's third Supreme Elder, Lord Tiger Demon's anger will. He sat in the air, opening his eyes emotionlessly. You need to know that every time I use force intrusion, my main body will need to expend 2 red date immortal essence beads. Follow the latest novels. n/velbin.com. Yang quickly said, Junior, understand, I will make the appropriate compensation when we return. Tiger Demon's anger will nodded, not speaking any further. He grabbed with his hand, tossing 2 red date immortal essence to the Expand Space Immortal Gu. At the same time, many mortal Gu rose up as well. After a while of preparing, Yang opened his palm, taking out Expand Space Immortal Gu from his immortal aperture. The immortal Gu was covered in a yellow light. Yang patted it lightly. The yellow light left his hands, breaking apart the Soul Taker battlefield and creating a hole. Yang was overjoyed. He put back Expand Space Immortal Gu, and the 9 palace crane below his feet cried out, flapping its wings and bringing him out of Soul Taker battlefield. Outside the battlefield, it was clear skies with no clouds. Oh no! He actually had Expand Space Immortal Gu, he's escaping. Yang, don't run if you have the guts, let us battle for 300 rounds. The shouts of the 2 Gu immortals behind him had a tone of anxiety and panic. Yang laughed heartily, his heart was filled with pride. Even Soul Taker battlefield cannot contain me. No matter who you are, ambushing and attempting to kill me, I will remember this. Don't think I will not find out just because you hid your identity, you used your own killer moves. When I return to the sect, I will investigate, I will definitely find out who you really are. Oh no. Suddenly, Yang sensed something amiss, his expression changed. He had always been a vigilant person and had great self-control. How could his emotions become so overjoyed the moment he left the Soul Taker battlefield, like he had just won a battle? This time, he failed to take back Hu immortal blessed land. He had let down Lord Tiger Demon's nurturing and expectations. He should feel downcast instead. Oh no! An intense warning of danger rose in his heart. Yang turned around, only to see a Gu immortal as tiny as a little boy, his body covered in a dark light. He was holding a dagger-shaped Gu worm. He was right behind Yang, less than a foot away. A third Gu immortal. There was a third Gu immortal in ambush. This was their true killer move, a plot within a plot. While Yang's mind relaxed the moment he left the Soul Taker battlefield, the fatal strike was launched at him. He Feng Yang was furious and shocked, his eyes were blood red and he was extremely angry. He did not retreat, instead, he had the urge to fight to the death with the enemy. Quickly dodge. The enemy is an emotion path Gu immortal, they can interfere with your judgment by influencing your emotions. Within his immortal aperture, Tiger Demon's anger will was shouting. He, it is too late. The third Gu immortal raised their dagger, stabbing at He Feng Yang. The dagger-shaped Gu worm burst out with an intense immortal Gu aura. He Feng Yang was horror-stricken and full of grievances. The enemy had an attack-type immortal Gu. He only had an expand space immortal Gu, it could not help him. The defensive mortal killer moves he had could not block this attack-type immortal Gu. Chapter 704, Little 9. The dagger-shaped immortal Gu was about to pierce into him. He Feng Yang felt anger, fear, bewilderment, unresignedness, all kinds of feelings seethed in him like lava, greatly influencing his actions. Am I going to die here today? He Feng Yang involuntarily had this thought. However, right at this dangerous moment, the desolate beast Nine Palace Crane under his feet suddenly let out a clear cry before fiercely turning its body around. He Feng Yang's body was thrown down while the Nine Palace Crane blocked the ambushing Gu immortal. Plop. A soft sound echoed, the dagger-shaped immortal Gu ruthlessly pierced into the Nine Palace Crane's chest. The third Gu immortal showed a shocked expression. He had thought disturbing He Feng Yang could influence the Nine Palace Crane. After all, He Feng Yang was an enslavement path Gu immortal and the Nine Palace Crane had been enslaved by him. If he was influenced, the Nine Palace Crane should also be nothing to worry about. He activated several emotion path killer moves to heavily disturb He Feng Yang, but he had never expected that at the last juncture, this Nine Palace Crane would actually move to protect its master. Little 9. He Feng Yang saw the Nine Palace Crane taking the fatal strike, tears immediately streamed down his eyes as he gave a pained roar. He had raised this Nine Palace Crane with great care and had never used any enslavement methods on it. Back when he was young, he had been brutally chased when out on a mission. His life was hanging in the balance when he accidentally bumped into the similarly heavily injured Nine Palace Crane. After this coincidental and accidental meeting, he and the Nine Palace Crane helped each other to escape the plight. The Nine Palace Crane was on the verge of death. He Feng Yang brought it back to the sect and used all of his wealth, barely managing to stabilize its life. In the dozens of years afterwards, He Feng Yang braved many dangers to earn money to treat the Nine Palace Crane little by little, slowly pulling it out from the brink of death. A profound sentiment more intimate than brothers was established like this between a man and a crane. Later an accident occurred, the rank 5 Gu master He Feng Yang had failed his mission and was in a heavily injured state. The resources on him could only save one person. If he treated the Nine Palace Crane, he would die, but if he saved himself, the Nine Palace Crane would not be able to maintain its lingering vitality. At the juncture of this choice, He Feng Yang thought for 3 days and 3 nights. In the end, he decided to sacrifice himself to save the Nine Palace Crane. This action caused Third Supreme Elder, Lord Tiger Demon, to be moved, and with his help, both He Feng Yang and the Nine Palace Crane were saved. He Feng Yang lived up to his expectations and after becoming a Gu immortal, he joined Lord Tiger Demon's faction. The Nine Palace Crane let out a mournful cry. Its enormous and slender body was covered with a layer of gray light. In this gray light, its body was rapidly shrinking and becoming younger. From a mature age it continuously turned to its youth, then to its infancy. This was the power of the immortal Gu. The dagger-shaped immortal Gu was actually a time path immortal Gu that could reverse the target's body to a younger state. Retreat. Don't let down your friend's kind intention. In his immortal aperture, Tiger Demon's anger will heaved a long sigh. Little 9. He Feng Yang shouted furiously and went back regardless of the advice of Tiger Demon's anger will. The hems of his gown fluttered and moved, turning into a crane feather cloak. A blood-red glint blossomed in his eyes and his slender green brows moved nimbly like a snake or dragon. The mysterious Gu immortal showed a surprised expression. He had not thought Yang, who could have clearly escaped in the moment just before, would actually return with killing intent. Yang was an enslavement path Gu immortal. Yang pushed forward his palms from which jade-green lightning rays surged out. The mysterious Gu immortal snorted, he raised the dagger and confronted it head-on, simultaneously activating emotion path killer moves to influence Yang's emotions. However, Yang's heart was filled completely with anger and was unexpectedly not influenced. Bam! A loud explosion erupted and the mysterious Gu immortal was thrown back. Yang's body trembled intensely and blood spurted out of his mouth, but he forcibly pulled himself together and pulled the infant Nine Palace crane into his hands. Little Nine. Yang held the Nine Palace crane in his embrace and turned around, escaping immediately with no intent to stay. The Nine Palace crane had already become the size of a white goose and was softly twittering as Yang held it in his embrace. The emotion path Gu immortal had been sent some distance away, that gap was enough for him to be unable to chase Yang in this moment. The other two mysterious Gu immortals hurried over after canceling the Soul Taker battlefield. Sigh, he escaped in the end. The Wind Path Gu immortal heaved a long sigh in pity. This guy is clearly an enslavement path Gu immortal, but he is actually not weak in close combat. That green lightning killer move isn't what it appears to be, it makes me think of. The emotion path Gu immortal said. If not for lacking time to gather more people, would we be afraid of not being able to put him down? How about we chase, maybe we can. The poison path Gu immortal was not resigned. He has expand space immortal Gu, Soul Taker battlefield cannot trap him. Let's leave quickly, it is not convenient to stay here. The Wind Path Gu immortal was calm. Right, this ambush was nothing more than a hastily considered course of action. We absolutely cannot lose sight of the main goal for small gains and risk exposing our identities, which would affect Master's grand plan. We will retreat. The emotion path Gu immortal ceased his absent-mindedness, and said softly. His position seemed to be higher than the other two Gu immortals and his words had a tone of decisiveness. I shall take my leave. The Wind Path Gu immortal rapidly flew in the air and soon was no more than a small black dot in the horizon. The Poison Path Gu immortal dropped into the ground and escaped. The Emotion Path Gu immortal paused for a while until the other two had completely left, his body then disappeared in the air as if he had never been there. Yang flew at top speed to Fei He Mountain, and without stopping, he directly entered Fu Hu Blessed Land. Lord Tiger Demon was standing beside an enormous stone pit, looking at the tens of thousands of rock men working inside the pit. Junior was incompetent and let down Lord's expectations. Yang bowed in greeting to Lord Tiger Demon, his body filled with injuries and his expression one of shame. You got injured. First go take a rest and heal yourself. Lord Tiger Demon did not ask anything to Yang and only waved his hand. That anger will in Yang's immortal aperture flew out and entered his mind. In just an instant, he understood all the things Yang had experienced in this trip. His gaze flickered. Shortly afterwards, he activated Anger Will Gu to produce Anger Will. The Anger Will flew through the sky, out of Fu Hu Blessed Land and towards the peak of Fei He Mountain. When it reached the conference hall at the mountain peak, 3 wills that were left here came after sensing it. These 3 wills were respectively from First Supreme Elder, Second Supreme Elder and the Third Supreme Elder, Lord Tiger Demon. They were in charge of monitoring the sect and also handling some small matters. The major matters were also arranged and at every set period of time, they would gather a group of Gu immortals to hold a joint discussion on them. Tiger Demon's Anger Will landed in the hall and fused with its previous will, then narrated the events that occurred to Yang. The first and second Supreme Elders' wills sank into silence when they heard the narration. They started to rapidly think, which caused their bodies to shrink at a visible speed. When they had shrunk into almost half the previous size, second Supreme Elders' will said, "Let's allow Lord Tiger Demon to have the final decision on the matters of Who Immortal Blessed Land." First Supreme Elders' will spoke, "He Feng Yang was ambushed and almost killed. This is much more serious than Who Immortal Blessed Land." "Where was he ambushed?" A goo worm flew out from the hall and turned into a map made of light and shadow. "Here." Lord Tiger Demon's anger will pointed at the location. First Supreme Elders will nodded and spoke heavily, "This location is a very good place to lay an ambush. There is no force situated both in front and behind, and this makes it a very good place of concealment. It seems the ambushers are very familiar with Central Continent's terrain. Investigate. When has there been anyone that had the guts to try to kill our 10 great ancient sex Gu immortals?" Second Supreme Elders will shouted in rage. "My concern is this. Elders, where do you think these Gu immortals came from?" Lord Tiger Demon's anger will asked. First Supreme Elders and Second Supreme Elders' wills glanced at each other, both revealing heavy expressions. Third Elder is worried these Gu immortals are Central Continent Gu immortals. First Supreme Elder said quietly. Tiger Demon's anger will spoke frankly with confidence, "Right. How long have our 10 great ancient sects been in control of Central Continent? The situation has been getting increasingly harder over these recent years. Why is that? Our Central Continent is different from the other 4 regions. Led by primordial origin Immortal Venerable, Central Continent had already been reformed during the remote Antiquity era, establishing the sect system. During the remote Antiquity era, sects had been rare. In olden Antiquity era, clan forces surpassed sect forces. In medieval Antiquity era, sects and clans clashed against each other, and advanced at an equal pace. In late Antiquity era, clans weakened while sects flourished. And now, sects stand in great numbers in Central Continent while there are almost no clans. The clan system only selects the clan's children as Gu masters. The sect system, however, allows ordinary mortals to step on the path of Gu cultivation. Our Central Continent's history is filled with the conflicts between the 2 great systems. After going through over 3 million years of struggles, evolution and accumulation, the sect system has prevailed. The number of Central Continent Gu immortals far surpass the other 4 regions, and they continue to increase, and soon will leave the control of our 10 great sections. How many Gu immortals can our 10 great sects recruit? The number of other Gu immortals in Central Continent are several times our own. As these Gu immortals of other sects, Demonic Path Gu immortals and Lone Cultivator Gu immortals continue to cultivate, they would require more cultivation resources. Conflicts are unavoidable because our 10 great sects control 80% of cultivation resources in Central Continent. Have there not been cases like Great Heavenly Sword sect before? It is just that they were secretly suppressed by our 10 great ancient sections. But in these recent years, new sects are still emerging unendingly. New innovations and new schools of thought are common occurrences, uncommon geniuses and monstrous talents are constantly sprouting among the mortals while there are limited spots in our 10 great ancient sections. Despite recruiting exceptional talents every year, Central Continent is truly too big. Lord Tiger Demon's anger will sighed as he said this. The 2 Supreme Elders were silent all along. The 10 great ancient sects held control of 80% of Central Continent's resources, but after the resources were split amongst everyone, how much would be left behind for individual Gu immortals? As a Gu immortal's cultivation got higher, their blessed land would require more resources to manage. In particular, the heavenly tribulations and earthly calamities would also continue to become stronger, and after every tribulation, the losses would be very severe, and the price to repair it would continue to become higher. It was impossible for the 10 great ancient sects Gu immortals to share their resources to others. In the past, although there were many sects outside of the 10 great sects, there were not many Gu immortals. Immortal and mortal were different concepts, there was a wide gap in the strength between mortals and immortals, thus mortals could be suppressed. Vischten. Velben. C. M for new updates. But at present, the Gu immortals outside of the 10 great sects were increasing constantly in numbers. Although these Gu immortals usually had inferior battle strength, their vast numbers were enough to bring about an impact to the 10 great ancient sects. Great Heavenly Sword sect was a good example. This large-sized sect had 2 Gu immortals originally and was a vassal of Immortal Crane sect. Now that they had a third Gu immortal, they immediately planned to leave Immortal Crane's sect and be independent. Chapter 705, Immortal Slaughtering Plan, Fang Yuan distributes benefits. Lord Tiger Demon's anger will continue. These years, our 10 great ancient sects have been in difficult circumstances, we could be said to be treading on thin ice. It is as if we are blocking the top of a volcano, the magma underneath will eventually burst out one day, causing a major impact to our 10 great sects. Third Supreme Elder is talking about the general situation in Central Continent right now. But this is the situation of the whole region, how can we change it? Second Supreme Elders will side. Lord Tiger Demons will continued, Great Heavenly Sword sect's example is in front of us. The Gu immortals in Hu immortal blessed land could be from other regions, but they are most likely to be an alliance of lone cultivators in our region. The ones who ambushed He Feng Yang today might also be Gu immortals of our own region's forces. But if that is the case, it would be terrifying. Second Supreme Elder nodded, it is indeed like that. The force that attacked He Feng Yang obviously does not want Hu immortal blessed land to continue being in the hands of Fang Yuan. If He Feng Yang dies, Immortal Crane's sect will have to attack Hu immortal blessed land forcefully to defend our reputation. Even though it is obvious that they are framed, Immortal Crane's sect has no choice but to go along with it. The 10 great ancient sects' pride and reputation that had been defended for innumerable years cannot be tarnished. If they could not take revenge for the death of their own Gu immortals, then their reputation would be ruined, the hearts of the people would waver, and everyone would be emboldened to offend Immortal Crane's sect. If Immortal Crane's sect is under such problems, they would not be able to manage their resources and land within Central Continent. By then, Immortal Crane's sect would be worn out physically and mentally, their exhaustion would attract even more greedy jackals and wolves. This would be a vicious cycle, once they fall into it, it would be hard to recover. Immortal Crane's sect's top 3 Supreme Elders were all experienced people, they were old monsters with bountiful life experience, they had considered this terrifying future prospect already. Not just them, among the other 9 great ancient sects of Central Continent, there were sure to be people who understood this. Right now, Central Continent was becoming saturated with experts, but there were limited resources, it was like a powder keg that was expanding endlessly. The 10 great ancient sects were sitting on top of the keg, if they were careless and ignited it, they might be blown to pieces. Tiger Demon, you used this topic today to start a long discussion, I'm sure you have some insights to share with us. Why not just tell us straight away? First Supreme Elder said. Tiger Demon's anger will laughed, saying startling things, my current idea is to agree with Fang Yuan's conditions and acknowledge that Hu immortal blessed land is a subsidiary of our sect. At the same time, we will find out the true identities of the culprits who attacked He Feng Yang. Once we know which lone cultivators are ganging up, we will collaborate with the other 9 sects and engage in a wide-scale immortal slaughtering plan. Immortal slaughtering. Second Supreme Elder heard this and excitement shined in his eyes. First Supreme Elders will shut his eyes, he slowly said, Tiger Demon, I will not hide it from you. This suggestion of yours had been brought up by Combat Immortal Sect's Gu Immortal Shirley many years ago, he had even sent a proposal to Heavenly Court, requesting for Heavenly Court to come out and organize the 10 great ancient sects, in order to execute this plan. Oh, that immortal Monkey King. Even though our 10 great ancient sects have had changes throughout history, the root of all these changes were righteous reasons, like the interchanging of main and side branches. These all have much to do with heavenly court. If the 10 ancient sects engage in a slaughter of immortals, it would have huge implications and involve innumerable benefits. Only heavenly court can step in to convince and assemble everyone, leading us towards victory. Tiger Demon's anger will agreed. But heavenly court rejected this proposal. They even warned us 10 great ancient sects not to specially target the respective smaller sects and lone cultivator Gu immortals. We are not to consciously massacre them, violators would be heavily punished. First Supreme Elders will said. What? Tiger Demon's anger will shouted in shock. This matter, how did I not know about it? Second Supreme Elder muttered to himself. First Supreme Elder sighed loudly, looking at the sky. The will of heavenly court is heaven's will. Heaven's will cannot be defied, heaven's will cannot be anticipated. He Feng Yang returned to Hu immortal blessed land once again. Fairy Tsang Yu and Fang Yuan were walking on Dang Hun Mountain, observing the growth of the Daoist Gu. Tai Bai Yun Sheng looked from afar, staring at Fairy Tsang Yu. Meanwhile, that blue charm lightning shadow was encircled by the 8 desolate beasts. Once in a while, a different desolate beast would go up and fight it. They were taking turns to wear it down. Brother, he was a bit slow. Fang Yuan saw He Feng Yang and smiled while saying plainly. He Feng Yang and Fairy Tsang Yu first looked at each other, seeing her nod and hint that she was unharmed. He turned to Fang Yuan. My sect has already agreed to acknowledge your side as our sect subsidiary. The relationship would have no time limit, and you can leave at any time. At the same time, we will engage in the trading of Daoist Gu. The price will be 1 immortal essence stone for 120 Daoist Gu. This is the rank 6 immortal Gu, promise. Immortal Gu promise was an information path Gu worm. Its use was similar to Mountain Pledge Gu and Sea Oath Gu. Immediately, He Feng Yang activated the immortal Gu to make a promise. When it was Fang Yuan's turn, he received the immortal Gu and checked that there were no issues. He consumed his green grape immortal essence and made a promise as well. Their promises created material forms that resembled lumps of gold. The two sides exchanged with each other to keep a copy each. Fairy Tsang Yu finally breathed out a sigh of relief. Now that the transaction had been established, she was finally safe. Fang Yuan breathed out in relief too. The situation that he had been trying to resolve had finally reached this stage. Fighting to the death with Immortal Crane's sect was definitely impossible. Immortal Crane's sect was a huge organization. If he angered them, Hu immortal blessed land would certainly be lost. With Fang Yuan's finances, he could not sustain a huge battle against Gu immortal level opponents. But He Feng Yang's words quickly earned his attention. On the way back, I was ambushed by 3 Gu immortals and my life was almost lost. The other party evidently wants to frame you. Our sect is investigating it now. I wonder if your force had offended anyone. What? In Central Continent, there were actually Gu immortals who dared to kill a Gu immortal from the 10 great sects. Fang Yuan did not conceal his shock. He remembered clearly that such situations would only happen a while after the 5 regions' chaotic war started. By then, the 5 regions would be in chaos, mortals would face difficulties living and battles would be unceasing. Even the authority of heavenly court was useless. The 10 great sects Gu immortals all faced assassinations. There were those who were taking revenge from the other 4 regions, but also Central Continent's own lone cultivator Gu immortals who were trying to fish for benefits. As the situation became more and more chaotic, Fang Yuan could even bring a band of demonic path Gu immortals to attack Hu immortal blessed land on Tian-Ti Mountain, killing Feng Jin Huang eventually. Unknowingly, Fang Yuan thought about the mysterious force that plotted against him secretly in Treasure Yellow Heaven over a year ago. But he did not even know what this force was called. Even if he knew, he would not expose such information to He Feng Yang. Thus, he shook his head. I have been in Hu immortal blessed land for this period of time, how could I offend other forces? I have no intentions to offend brother he, but thinking about it, Immortal Crane's sect probably attracts more enemies than me. Was it a force trying to plot against your sect, but wanting to use me as a diversion instead? He Feng Yang did not get the information he wanted. He was a little disappointed, but he could not force Feng Yuan. Immortal Crane's sect had their own worries. Even though Feng Yuan was only an immortal zombie, the force behind him allowed the two sides to speak on equal terms. He Feng Yang and Fairy Yu did not stay any longer. Feng Yuan opened to Immortal Blessed Land's door and sent them out. Feng Yuan stood at the door, saying goodbye to them. The other 9 sects who saw this immediately realized that something had occurred in Hu Immortal Blessed Land. What is going on? Why is there an immortal zombie? He Feng Yang and Fairy Yu came with great confidence, but now their expression are not quite right. It seems a problem occurred. Did they fail to take it down? That's impossible, right? Find new Tories on nov/el-bin.com. The Gu immortals were confused, they were guessing randomly. The 10 great ancient sects were in cahoots. They were the overlords of Central Continent. Over these last years there was unavoidably no lack of hidden competition among themselves. The contest of Hu Immortal Blessed Land was at first an open competition, using disciples from each sect to decide the eventual owner, but the result was that Feng Yuan actually took advantage. Now, it was a hidden contest. They could not question Immortal Crane's sect in public, that would break the unspoken rules. The Gu immortals did not know what happened to Hu Immortal Blessed Land. They were hesitant to return. Feng Yuan closed the door, as He Lu Lan and Fairy Li Shan came to congratulate him with smiles on their faces. Feng Yuan, you have caused me to look at you in a different light. This time, the collaboration between you and Immortal Crane's sect succeeded without any battle. It was truly a great victory. Fairy Li Shan was full of praise. This was the type of victory that Gu immortals loved the most. Without any battles, without any huge investments, but the rewards were simply incredible. Senior is not entirely correct. Feng Yuan laughed heartily. It is not me who is collaborating with Immortal Crane's sect, it is us. After all, to refine the Airsac Gu, we will need He Lu Lan's Strength Chi Gu to muster the Strength Chi. As for the profits of the Guts Gu, your side will take 40%, my side will take 60%. Fairy Li Shan heard this and the smile on her face intensified. As long as one was not a fool, they could see the prospects of the transaction of Guts Gu. She understood clearly that Feng Yuan's action was to stabilize their alliance completely, to bind them to Dang Hun Mountain itself. In the future, when Hu Immortal Blessed Land is attacked, they would need to come and defend it too. But with such great benefits, Fairy Li Shan could not help but be moved. He Lu Lan looked at Feng Yuan deeply. To think that you had this method, Feng Yuan, conceptualizing the Airsac Gu. To refine the rank 3 Airsac Gu, you need to use the rank 6 Strength Chi Gu. This Gu is truly very special. A part of this was definitely due to Wisdom Gu's credit. After obtaining Wisdom Gu, Feng Yuan had been conceptualizing, to see if there was a way to extract Guts Gu under the help of unlimited inspiration. The success this time was also because he had unexpectedly heard from Tai Bai Yunsheng that He Lu Lan had the Strength Chi Immortal Gu. Only an immortal class strength could envelop the Guts Gu, allowing it to leave Dang Hun Mountain unscathed. Feng Yuan changed the topic. To produce Guts Gu, we will need huge amounts of souls. I will have to trouble the two of you. Northern Plains is a land of battles. Chaotic wars happen all the time, and beast groups and tribes relocate constantly. There are surely many souls that can be collected there. We will go and settle this now. He Lu Lan wanted to act immediately. After she ascended to an immortal, her need for resources had become much greater, especially in terms of immortal essence stones. She could not always rely on Fairy Li Shan. Relying on others was not He Lulan's style. Fairy Li Shan agreed, that's right, Dang Hun Mountain does not have any requirements for the type of soul. We can even buy them from Northern Plains Zombie Alliance. It will be more expensive than collecting the souls ourselves, but the price would be acceptable and we can save lots of trouble. He. Fong Yuan waved a hand, please hold on for a moment, don't be too anxious now. Now, come with me to suppress a Gu Immortal. This Gu Immortal is inside Hu Immortal Blessed Land right now. Oh. Who? Tai Bai Yun Xing questioned. There are other Gu Immortals hiding in the Blessed Land now. Is it an ambush by Immortal Crane sect, having ulterior motives? He Lulan and Fairy Li Shan looked at each other with confused and shocked expressions. Chapter 706, Extorting an Immortal Gu Remnant Recipe. Fong Yuan smiled mysteriously, this immortal is right under our noses, please follow me. Under Fong Yuan's lead, everyone came before the blue charm lightning shadow. The blue charm lightning shadow right now was fighting in the air with the Iron Crown Eagle, its small blue figure was colliding with the desolate beast Iron Crown Eagle's huge body, fighting evenly back and forth. He Lulan was even more uncertain now. The Gu Immortal you are talking about is the blue charm lightning shadow? Fong Yuan smiled and did not respond. Tai Bai Yun Xing's eyes shone with brilliance, now that you've mentioned it, this blue charm lightning shadow is acting really strangely. That's right. Fairy Li Shan showed a wary and vigilant expression, logically speaking, the blue charm lightning shadow was formed from an earthly calamity, its main target would be the owner of Hu Immortal Blessed Land, which is you, Fong Yuan. But it has been engaging with these desolate beasts all this time, it had no intentions to attack you. He Lulan continued, no wonder I felt that it was strange, when the desolate beast appeared, this blue charm lightning shadow seemed to have been shocked, it stopped growling and started to conceal its presence. This blue charm lightning shadow is weird, I'm sure it is not normal. He. Fong Yuan laughed heartily, saying, the blue charm lightning shadow in the past had no issues, but after it was sent out of the blessed land by me, it was captured by a lightning path Gu Immortal, and was refined into some sort of puppet killer move. When Immortal Crane sect came to attack my blessed land, this Gu Immortal manipulated the blue charm lightning shadow into barging in, his objective was to fish for benefits. If Immortal Crane sect failed, he could show up as a representative of his sect, and strike first. I wonder if my analysis is correct, Myriad Dragon Doc's Vicious Lightning Fiend. How did you know that I am Vicious Lightning Fiend? The blue charm lightning shadow could not put up a facade any longer, he ignored the Iron Crown Eagle and flew to Fong Yuan. The Iron Crown Eagle chased it, but Fong Yuan waved a hand, the eagle screeched and flew away. Myriad Dragon Doc's Vicious Lightning Fiend. He Lulan and Fairy Li Shan looked at each other, they knew about Myriad Dragon Doc, it was one of the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent, just like Immortal Crane sect. But who Vicious Lightning Fiend was, they did not have much of an idea. Only Tai Bai Yun Xing's eyes shone brightly, after coming to Hu Immortal Blessed Land, he had collected a lot of information upon Fong Yuan's advice, he knew a lot of intelligence about Central Continent's Gu Immortals. Vicious Lightning Fiend is a rank 6 Gu Immortal, he has passed 2 heavenly tribulations and had an amazing history of ending in a draw after fighting with a rank 7 Gu Immortal. But many years ago, he had entered closed cultivation. There had been no traces of him these last few years in Central Continent. Tai Bai Yun Xing introduced. A draw with a rank 7 Gu Immortal. Fairy Li Shan's gaze shone. He Lulan had a proud and arrogant demeanor as she snorted coldly. The blue charm lightning shadow looked at everyone, but eventually his gaze locked onto Fong Yuan. Who are you guys? My immortal killer move was the fruit of my many years of closed cultivation, after thinking of how to raise my battle strength. A year ago, I learned that there was a blue charm lightning shadow on Tian Ti Mountain, it was lurking around there and did not want to leave, thus I struck secretly and captured the blue charm lightning shadow. A few months ago, I perfected my immortal killer move, making this blue charm lightning shadow my puppet. I have only told this secret to a few people. You guys actually know about this in detail. Tell me, who in the world are you? Fang Yuan snorted. He said very unkindly, "Vicious lightning fiend, you might have a fierce reputation, but we are not afraid of you. You made the blue charm lightning shadow into your puppet, I'm sure you paid a heavy price for that. I am in a bad mood, you should be careful, otherwise if I get angry, I will kill this blue charm lightning shadow right here, can you stop me?" The blue charm lightning shadow shouted out angrily. He showed his irascible nature. "You dare. I am a Gu immortal of myriad dragon dock. Don't think you can continue to be arrogant, it is only temporarily that you are occupying Hu immortal blessed land. Once your identities are exposed, we, the 10 great ancient sects, will make sure all of you lone cultivators and demonic cultivators are done for." "Oh. Is that so?" Fang Yuan's eyes shone with brilliance. "You saw our earlier transaction clearly, we are already a subsidiary of Immortal Crane Sect, we have both made a promise, even if Myriad Dragon Dock wants to deal with us, you will need to get past Immortal Crane Sect first." That's right, earlier, Immortal Crane Sect's He Feng Yang was attacked, the mastermind was you, or rather, Myriad Dragon Dock. Right? Bullshit. We of the 10 great ancient sects are on the same side, even if we compete with each other both openly and secretly, how could we do things without limits like you lone cultivators with demonic natures? The blue charm lightning shadow was furious. Fang Yuan did not speak, he glanced over at He Lulan. He Lulan was a formidable character just like him, they cooperated flawlessly. She pretended to jump to a realization, saying, "Fang Yuan, you are absolutely right. Hu immortal blessed land, Dang Hun Mountain, and Daoist Gu are extremely huge benefits. After assassinating He Feng Yang, Immortal Crane Sect will come to attack us. By then, when we both suffer great losses, Myriad Dragon Dock will be able to take advantage of the situation." Read latest ch. Pictures at n/velbi.co/m. You're bullshitting. Bullshit. How can I be such a petty person? The blue charm lightning shadow's anger was through the roof, he shouted unceasingly. He Lulan laughed sinisterly, "But the timing in which you appeared was simply too coincidental. When He Feng Yang attacked Hu immortal blessed land, all the events that happened in here, how could the outside world know? Why did He Feng Yang encounter an assassination the moment he left Hu immortal blessed land? Obviously, you were an insider and used some special method to inform your main body, who then organized the ambush." He Lulan fully expressed her twisted logic, her words shocked the blue charm lightning shadow. But immediately after, he reacted, turning angry from shame, rebuking, "Hu immortal blessed land is a separate piece of heaven and earth, unless I have an immortal killer move, how could I communicate with my main body? But if I use an immortal killer move, such intense immortal aura would be detected by you guys, isn't that right? But there was a moment when Hu immortal blessed land opened its doors, that way, we were connected to the outside world. You communicated with your main body at that very point in time." He Lulan immediately retorted. "Scumbag. Bullshit. I am honorable and righteous, how can I be like that? No, I was almost tricked by you. How can He Feng Yang's ambush have anything to do with my blue charm lightning shadow sending out information? Even if the other party did not know what happened in Hu immortal blessed land, they can still ambush He Feng Yang. There is no relationship between the two issues." The blue charm lightning shadow screamed. He Lulan said eerily, "Whether a relationship exists, we do not care about that. We will tell this to Immortal Crane Sect, you can explain things to them yourself. Go ahead and tell them. I have not done any of the things you've said, why would I be afraid of slander?" The blue charm lightning shadow tried to put up a front. At this time, Tai Bai Yunxing said, "Oh. I remember now, recently in Immortal Crane Sect's region of control, wasn't there the matter of Great Heavenly Sword Sect trying to gain independence? There had been rumors that the matter of Great Heavenly Sword Sect was instigated by Myriad Dragon Doc. I get it. After killing He Feng Yang, Immortal Crane Sect's main forces will come and attack our blessed land. In that case, it will be even easier for Great Heavenly Sword Sect to detach from Immortal Crane Sect. After Great Heavenly Sword Sect joins Myriad Dragon Doc, and become your subsidiary, Immortal Crane Sect's territory at the northwest area will be devoured by Myriad Dragon Doc. By then, even if they've taken down Hu Immortal Blessed Land, they will suffer a huge loss in battle strength. If they return and want to settle the matter with Myriad Dragon Doc, it would be too late, and they would not have the strength to do so. Tai Bai Yunxing's words not only shocked the blue charm lightning shadow, even Fang Yuan was looking at him in surprise. Although Tai Bai Yunxing was a good person and had been kind in his life, he was old and experienced. His words were like a dagger stabbing into the heart of the matter. He directly pointed out Vicious Lightning Fiend's weakness. The blue charm lightning shadow finally became quiet. After a dozen breaths of time, he said, "Damn, you bunch of scheming scoundrels, you are simply twisting logic as you like, you're making things up. Say it, what is the condition for letting go of my lightning shadow puppet?" He Lulan and Tai Bai Yunxing did not speak, they looked at Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan laughed lightly, saying, "A ridiculous condition, Vicious Lightning Fiend, I am very interested in this immortal killer move that can turn the blue charm lightning shadow into a puppet. Why don't you teach me?" "Screw you. This is a trump card that I finally came up with after 4 years of closed cultivation. With just a few words from you, you want to take the fruits of my labor, it will only happen in your dreams. Even if this puppet is destroyed, I will not give it to you." The blue charm lightning shadow shouted in anger, categorically rejecting this. But Fang Yuan had his previous life's memories, he was carrying out a plan based on them and knew about Vicious Lightning Fiend's bottom line. He chuckled as he said slowly, "Vicious Lightning Fiend, your immortal killer move was only created in a rush, the success rate is definitely not high. The blue charm lightning shadow has rank 6 battle strength, isn't it such a waste to discard it here? How about this, I will take a step back, I do not want your immortal killer move, I want the blood deity remnant recipe that you have." The blue charm lightning shadow's expression was grim. "How did you know that I have blood deity's remnant recipe? There are only a small number of Gu immortals in Myriad Dragon Doc that know about this secret." "Humph, frog in the well, there are no impenetrable walls in this world, even if very few people know, can't I have Gu worms to deduce it?" Fang Yuan showed a disposition of unfathomable depth. "Good, very good. I am even more curious about your true identities now." "Humph, I will admit a loss this time." The blue charm lightning shadow agreed as he gritted his teeth. "Let's trade using Treasure Yellow Heaven," Fang Yuan said. "No way, Treasure Yellow Heaven will expose the blue charm lightning shadow puppet, it will expose my immortal killer move in advance." The blue charm lightning shadow rejected immediately. Fang Yuan laughed coldly, "Vicious Lightning Fiend, don't think I am unaware, after coming out of closed cultivation, you plan to imitate Sword Immortal Bochin, to challenge experts from all over the region, and use your power to contest for the title of the strongest. Your first target must be Immortal Yao Mao. You sure know a lot." The blue charm lightning shadow's tone was cold, but his heart was jumping. The other party's grasp on information was far too detailed, he was in a very passive spot. Fang Yuan ordered Little Hu Immortal to act, using Connecting Heaven Gu to connect to Treasure Yellow Heaven, before finding Vicious Lightning Fiend's main body. After the two negotiated, Fang Yuan sent the blue charm lightning shadow as merchandise and sent it over. Immediately, the treasure light burst into the sky, attracting countless divine senses. Vicious Lightning Fiend quickly took out Blood Deity's Immortal Gu remnant recipe, who knew how many Gu immortals cried out in alarm at this. "Scoundrel, quickly settle the deal." Vicious lightning fiend's divine sense screamed. "Vicious lightning fiend, you are not being genuine. The blood deity remnant recipe you have is 70% complete, you are trying to scam my ignorance, only taking out a 40% remnant recipe." Fong Yuan said slowly. Vicious lightning fiend was shocked. "How can I have a 70% blood deity remnant recipe? I am in no rush, the longer the blue charm lightning shadow is exposed, the more people will know." Fong Yuan said casually. Vicious lightning fiend almost spat blood from anger. "Lad, don't think that with a wisdom path Gu immortal behind you deducing things, you can act so arrogantly. I will remember you, just you wait." Saying this, he finally tossed out a 70% blood deity remnant recipe. An immortal Gu remnant recipe with such a high completion rate appeared. Since when did blue charm lightning shadow become a commodity? Some Gu immortals fortunate enough to witness the transaction went into deep shock. Fong Yuan did not make things difficult for vicious lightning fiend this time, they swiftly ended the deal. Under the gazes of He Lu Lan and the others, Fong Yuan took the immortal Gu remnant recipe, exclaiming in his heart, "I obtained this so easily, something that I had been unable to get my hands on in my previous life no matter what. A 70% blood deity immortal Gu remnant recipe, together with my previous life's accumulations, and with wisdom Gu's power, I should be able to complete the blood deity immortal Gu recipe." Next, he thought about vicious lightning fiend. This person had an fierce, ruthless, and fiery personality. In his previous life, he attained rank 7 and had incredible battle strength. During the 5 regions chaotic war, he used the immortal killer move lightning deity, to accumulate 8 rank 6 battle strength beings that were similar to the blue charm lightning shadow. After Feng Jiugu died, he contested for the prize status of being the number 1 in battle strength among rank 7. He fought with immortal Monkey King Shirley for 3 days and 3 nights but unfortunately lost. In his previous life, Fong Yuan had most wanted to refine the immortal Gu blood deity. He had once targeted the immortal Gu remnant recipe in vicious lightning fiend's possession, but his plot failed and he escaped after being heavily injured. To think that in this life, he could obtain what he had always wanted in his previous life in such a manner. Chapter 707, Overwhelming Profits. In Central Continent time, 3 days after extorting vicious lightning fiend, Immortal Crane's sect announced to the world, they recognized Fong Yuan as the owner of Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Hu Immortal Blessed Land was now a subsidiary force of Immortal Crane sect, and could leave at any time. This shocking news was like a large rock being thrown into a lake, causing many surging waves and splashes. At once, the world of Central Continent's Gu immortals was in a commotion. Earlier, Immortal Crane's sect had declared publicly that Fong Yuan was a traitor of the sect, and would receive judgment soon. Such matters were common in Central Continent. Many Gu masters, after obtaining benefits, would not want to share it with their sect, or they might be recruited by other sects, and so on. Such reasons caused them to betray their original sect. The cohesion of members under the sect system was weaker compared to the clan and tribe system that united people from the same bloodline together. Among sects, the 10 great ancient sects had the highest cohesion. But there were still traitors that appeared in these ancient sects. In the past, First Gen Guyu obtained a blood path true inheritance and betrayed Immortal Crane's sect, going to southern border and hiding his name and identity. These recent years, Myriad Dragon Doc's former disciple Song Zixing had also betrayed his sect. After growing from battles, he was now a rank 7 Gu immortal, known as the Blood Dragon. He was a famous demonic path expert in Central Continent. Thus, when Fong Yuan as a rank 5 Gu master had betrayed Immortal Crane's sect, it was only news of mild magnitude. But now, Immortal Crane's sect had gathered up its forces and gone to pass judgment on Fang Yuan. The result was nothing anyone could have expected. In this time, who knew how many people thought that Fang Yuan was courting death, their eyes were popping out of their sockets when they learned about the news. After that, even more inside information was released, from Immortal Crane's sect, Vicious Lightning Fiend, and Fang Yuan. There were many rumors, like the strength of Dang Hun Mountain and Hu Immortal Blessed Land, the rise of a mysterious force, Vicious Lightning Fiend's immortal killer move, all these attracted people's attentions. Among them, the biggest highlight was the transaction of Gu. Gu could leave Dang Hun Mountain and be stored, thus they could be traded. There were such great profits implied by this information, all the different forces were moved. The Gu immortals finally understood why Immortal Crane's sect made such a declaration. It was the motivation of profits. For Gu, forsaking some hollow reputation was nothing. Furthermore, Fang Yuan acknowledged that his force was a subsidiary of Immortal Crane's sect. This was giving face to the ancient sects. The other 9 great ancient sects called Immortal Crane's sect shameless on one hand, while interacting with Hu Immortal Blessed Land on the other. Fang Yuan's Gu had yet to begin being traded, but he had already received a large number of letter Gu, and they were still coming. Regardless of whether it was a large or small force, Fang Yuan replied to them all. This was to establish the first contact between them. Using this as an opportunity, Fang Yuan finally entered the limelight of Central Continent, with the status of an immortal zombie and the owner of Hu Immortal Blessed Land. He entered the eyes of all the Gu immortals and the different forces. A few days later, He Lu Lan brought in the first batch of souls. There were hundreds of thousands of them. Of course, most of them were souls of wild beasts. Fang Yuan placed them all into Dang Hun Mountain, and Hu Immortal Land's spirit started to release Dang Hun Mountain's power, vibrating and turning these souls into fragments. As these soul fragments were scattered on the surface of Dang Hun Mountain, they gradually formed into Gu. As the Gu grew here, Fang Yuan started to make his preparations elsewhere. He ordered all of his hairy men to start creating the foundational Gu worms. After 7 days and 7 nights, working in 3 shifts, they had finally produced a large number of Gu worms. He next ordered the rock men to start building a stone nest. Half a month later, the first batch of souls were all used up, as a large number of Gu were formed on Dang Hun Mountain. He Lu Lan brought the second batch of souls into Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Fang Yuan brought her to the stone nest near Dang Hun Mountain. He Lu Lan stood at the edge of the stone nest. Seeing the huge structure below her, she was very shocked at Fang Yuan's huge investment. This stone nest was tens of acres in area, and it was hundreds of meters deep into the ground. At the outer ring of the stone nest, it was a huge sinkhole, dug manually, vertically up and down. The circular sinkhole was 1 li in radius, at least 3 li deep, like the frame of a tall piece of glassware. At the center of the sinkhole, there was a huge stone pillar. The stone pillar was over 300 meters in radius. This length was slightly more than half of 1 li, thus, the stone pillar and the circular sinkhole did not touch. They were at least 150 meters apart, and there was an empty space left purposely. The stone pillar was like an ant hill. It was complex inside but could reach anywhere as long as one knew the directions. Be it the outer wall of the stone pillar, or the inner area of the circular sinkhole, there were countless rooms dug out. In each room, there was an elderly hairy man, and they had the basic Gu refinement materials and tools they needed. Fairy Lu Lan, please. Fang Yuan brought He Lu Lan to the top of the stone pillar, at the centermost spot. He Lu Lan used her investigative Gu non-stop, realizing that this stone pillar and the sinkhole around the stone pillar had countless Gu worms around them at set intervals. These arrangements had many complicated smaller details. Hei Lu Lan was going dizzy from seeing them, but what she knew was that these arrangements were not randomly set up, they were linked to each other and formed a great influence as a whole. It was set up with deep intentions. Don't tell me. Hei Lu Lan was guessing in her heart, when Fang Yuan said, "Fairy, I am already done preparing, you can use the strength Qi Immortal Gu now." Oh. Please teach me. Fairy only needs to activate strength Qi Immortal Gu, and let the strength Qi spread out naturally. Fang Yuan explained. Hei Lu Lan followed his instructions. A powerful strength Qi formed air currents and spread out everywhere. As the strength Qi got thicker, they formed into a fog-like state, as they slowly spread and covered the entire stone nest. In the stone nest, countless mortal Gu were activated, shining with all sorts of dazzling lights, like the stars in the night sky. Under the combined force of these Gu worms, the vast strength Qi was slowly extracted strand by strand. In a few breaths of time, all of the strength Qi was in between the stone pillar and the sinkhole. After a dozen breaths of time, these strength Qi continued to move about, forming into the shape of a tornado, spinning around the stone pillar. Start the Gu refinement. Fang Yuan instructed. As the hairy men in the rooms prepared themselves, they opened their eyes and started to refine Gu. Whenever they needed strength Qi as a Gu refinement material, the turbulent strength Qi outside the room would enter it automatically. Such a scene was praised by Hei Lu Lan in amazement. Fang Yuan, your stone nest is so grand and huge, it can accommodate thousands of hairy men refining Gu at the same time. This is truly an innovative and incredible idea. Fang Yuan laughed. Didn't I tell you I am also a refinement master? In truth, this stone nest was invented during the Five Regions' chaotic war in his previous life. Because of the unceasing battles that occurred at both large and small scale, Gu masters would expend a lot of their Gu worms, all of the forces needed to replenish their Gu worms. Thus, they gradually researched and came up with such a stone nest that could accommodate so many Gu masters, a structure that can allow mass refinement of Gu. I will name this the Fang Yuan stone nest. It is a place specially used to mass-produce mortal Gu. I split the refinement process of the air sac Gu into over a dozen steps. When the hairy men at the highest level finish the first step, they will pass the partly done product to the next floor's rooms. After the next floor finishes their refinement, they will send the partly done product to the next floor. This way, each of the hairy men would be specialized in one step. Not only would this prevent my Gu recipe from leaking, they can also get more familiar with their own steps and increase the success rate. Fang Yuan shamelessly took the invention of someone in his previous life for his own. Hei Lu Lan could not help but praise again. This is indeed the right method to mass-produce mortal Gu. In a certain aspect, it can even reduce the required proficiency of the Gu refiners themselves, because they only need to finish one step of the entire refinement process. But you, Fang Yuan, would be able to free yourself from the complication of dealing with all the many small steps, only having to control the materials. There are some Gu recipes that need the Gu refiner to refine it non-stop. Thankfully, air sac Gu is not like that. Fang Yuan said. Hei Lu Lan nodded. I was worried that the number of air sac Gu would be too little, and that would affect the sale of guts Gu. After all, each air sac Gu can only hold one guts Gu. But now that I've seen this stone nest for myself, I can feel assured. How are you intending to sell these guts Gu? Get your Avright. Ovals at no/v/e/lb. n.com. Fang Yuan had a plan already. Most of the sales will be towards the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent. I have already established a connection via Whole Earth Gu with the 10 great sections. From now on, We will trade using these whole earth Gu, the remaining guts Gu will be sold in treasure yellow heaven. Aren't you going to sell some to the other sects in Central Continent specifically? No. Right now, the 10 great sects are the leaders of Central Continent, our identities and statuses are already very sensitive, we do not need to test the limits of the ancient sections. Our current peace was not obtained easily, we should quietly wait and reap our profits. He Lulan heard this and nodded, she was completely at ease now. Time passed by quickly, another half a month passed in Hu immortal blessed land. The first batch of guts Gu had already been sold, after accounting for the costs, as well as He Lulan and Fairy Li Shan's 40% cut, Fang Yuan earned 43 immortal essence stones. A month later in Hu immortal blessed land's time, the second batch of guts Gu was sold, and Fang Yuan's immortal essence stone stockpile increased by another 46 pieces. The third batch of guts Gu earned him 47 pieces. The market reception was great, the 10 great ancient sects' demand was increasing, and sales in treasure yellow heaven were extremely heated, usually in just 1 to 2 days, they would all be sold. Guts Gu was after all a treasure that spectral soul demon Venerable recommended, the efficiency of strengthening the soul was very high, at least 10 times as efficient as ordinary methods. In truth, not only did soul path Gu masters need it, enslavement path, refinement path and other related paths also needed a foundation in their soul. When a Gu master ascends to Gu immortal, the soul was also an important element for the thickness of the human qi, nobody would resent their soul for being strong. Fang Yuan started to feel the benefits of having a monopolized market. He could control the market, and control the situation. He could sell to anyone he wanted to, and he could sell at any quantity he set. But he did not raise prices randomly, because guts Gu were not the only way to strengthen souls, if the price was too high, people would just use their original methods instead. That would instead cause Fang Yuan's profits to fall. After 3 batches of guts Gu were sold, Fang Yuan had over 100 immortal essence stones. He started to purchase hairy men in bulk, creating more rooms in the stone nest and expanding his scale of production. The more hairy men he had, the higher the efficiency of refining Gu, this caused the profits that Fang Yuan gained from each batch of guts Gu sold to be higher as well. After 5 months in Hu immortal blessed land's time, his earnings finally stabilized, each batch of guts Gu would earn him 48 immortal essence stones in total profit. This was genuinely an overwhelming profit. The scariest thing was, guts Gu were consumable Gu, they were gone after 1 use. The market demand for them would never dwindle. He Lulan and Fairy Li Shan started to feel that they were a burden. Because their job was to collect souls. But now, the quantity of the souls gathered to use for Dang Hun Mountain gradually became the biggest restriction in the sale of guts Gu. Chapter 708, Returning the 8 Desolate Beasts. Northern Plains, Xianxia blessed land. Boom boom boom. The huge ice-spiked divine ape caused tremors with every step it took. Walking towards the cloud building, it stopped and raised its head to growl, the sound waves traveled far, causing the clouds to shake. Fang Yuan was standing far away with Xianxia land spirit, they were conversing but they turned around to look after hearing the noise. This little monkey. Xianxia land spirit stretched out his left arm, stroking his mustache as he laughed. He was sealed by a chi path killer move, the 15 layers had been reduced to 6 layers, all thanks to the help of the Inkman King. Thus, Xianxia land spirit's left arm was free to move now, only his right arm was left immobile. Fang Yuan smiled, as he saw the cloud building rise up slowly, exposing a cave made of cloud soil underneath. The cloud fog was misty, covering the ice-spiked divine ape completely. The ice-spiked divine ape stepped into the hole and its tall figure gradually vanished from Fang Yuan's vision. Finally, the cloud building gradually descended, and resealed the cave. The goo worms in the cave were activated, causing the ice-spiked divine ape to go into hibernation. Not far away, the same sight was happening with other cloud buildings. Except that the ones entering the caves were not the ice-spiked divine ape, but the phoenix feather lava crocodile, golden sand dark stallion and the other desolate beasts. Ice-spiked divine ape, phoenix feather lava crocodile, golden sand dark stallion, azure dragon vine, swamp crab, peach wolf, iron crown eagle and earth chief desolate beast, I have returned to you the 8 desolate beasts that you lent me without a single scratch. Actually, letting them out to roam once in a while is a good thing. Letting them sleep all the time, although it saves food, it will affect their battle strength. Fong Yuan said. Langya Land's spirit rolled his eyes. Rascal, do you think I cannot understand what you are trying to imply? You want to borrow my desolate beasts again to fight for you, right? Humph, these desolate beasts were captured with much difficulty, they are an important line of defense for Langya blessed land. If you want to borrow them again, you cannot bring all 8 at once. Fong Yuan laughed nonchalantly, stretching out his arm. All right, I return to you your desolate beasts. According to our agreement, you should return the 2 great immortal Gu, man as before and landscape as before, to me now. Langya Land's spirit heard this and his aura diminished. He smiled sheepishly. Well. Little Fong, no, brother Fong, man as before and landscape as before are 2 incredible immortal Gu. I have not finished researching them yet. Can you give me a few more days? You. Uvels upt. Tes on nov/l/bi.com. Fong Yuan's expression turned stiff. Don't even think about it, hand them over. Little brother Fong, no, big brother Fong, you cannot be so ruthless. You know that I am current sealed by the Chi Path move, I cannot display my true strength as an expert, there's no way my research can have progress. This deal was very disadvantageous to me. Langya Land's spirit shouted. This transaction was willingly done by the 2 of us, I did not force you. It is your problem that you made a loss, you want to regret it now. Too late. Quickly hand it over, don't forget that we used Mountain Pledge Gu to make the vow, this also involves your friend Mo Tan Sang, whoever breaks the vow would have to pay with his life. Fong Yuan snickered continuously. O land spirit, return him the immortal Gu. Mo Tan Sang quickly hurried over, staring at Langya Land's spirit worriedly. Langya Land's spirit looked at Mo Tan Sang, he could not stand his gaze and stomped his foot, handing over man as before and landscape as before, these 2 immortal Gu, over to Fong Yuan with much reluctance. Damn brat, you always take advantage of me in the end. Take it, you scheming fellow. Langya Land's spirit continued to grumble. Fong Yuan snorted disgruntledly, I took advantage. What advantage did I take? I fed all 8 of your desolate beasts till they were full, while no battles actually took place, it was like taking a walk with them. I saved some costs for you, nor am I even asking you to settle the score. Score, what score? Didn't I feed your rising azure cloud immortal Gu as well, in order to buy the food, I spent a lot of immortal essence stones too, if you want to calculate all of this, let's count properly and see who paid a higher price. Langya Land's spirit was stomping his foot in agitation, he rebuked immediately. The feeding of desolate beasts was naturally much simpler and cheaper than feeding immortal Gu. Fong Yuan could not argue with Langya Land's spirit over this, but he had control of Langya Land's spirit's weakness, thus he could speak in a confident tone. He laughed coldly. Langya Land's spirit, do you still want to research man as before and landscape as before? Do you? Langya Land's spirit's expression changed, he smiled amicably. Yes, I want to even in my dreams. Then good. Fong Yuan patted Langya Land's spirit's head. Is there a point in being calculative, it was your fault for keeping my rising azure cloud immortal Gu as collateral, right? Get lost. Langya Land's spirit was so angry that he shrugged off Fang Yuan's hand. You brat, you have no manners, I am your senior. Oh. Fang Yuan stared, while showing a flash of the two immortal Gu in his hand. Langya Land's spirit's expression changed, he laughed as he patted Fang Yuan's leg. Fang Yuan, there's nothing I can do, you really suit my taste, we are old friends with much in common after all. Mo Tan Sang, who was at the side, witnessed this entire scene speechlessly. Fang Yuan placed the two immortal Gu into his own immortal aperture and took out 3 immortal Gu recipes. After 5 months in Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Fang Yuan had made 6 deals with Langya Land Spirit. The lower the completion rate of the immortal Gu recipe, the more green grape immortal essence would be consumed during the deduction, and it would take more time as well. The 3 immortal Gu recipes that Fang Yuan took out now had only 60% completion rate originally, he spent half a month before he completed them with difficulty. Langya Land's spirit received the immortal Gu recipes and looked, sighing while shaking his head, lad, I have to admit, you are an unparalleled genius in deducing Gu recipes. It is such a pity that you have become an immortal zombie. Fang Yuan followed up and asked, I also want to find a way to remove my immortal zombie status, do you know of any methods? There are a bunch of methods, of course, but they are all old and cannot keep up with the times. Some have high risks, some have low probabilities of success, while some have extinct materials, for some, I don't even believe the methods. Langya Land Spirit shook his head, after all, I am a land spirit, I would not usually think about an immortal zombie's problems. Brother Fang might be able to get into Northern Plains Zombie Alliance branch. The higher-ups of Zombie Alliance are mostly immortal zombies, they have been researching on how to get rid of the immortal zombie body, and regain their lives. Furthermore, several years ago, I've heard some rumors that Northern Plains Zombie Alliance had made some progress on this matter. Mo Tan Sang suggested at this time. Fang Yuan nodded, I have such intentions, but I cannot expose myself. I destroyed 88 Truyang building and ruined Imperial Court Blessed Land, it is inconvenient to appear in public. If deductions were made against me, that would be horrible. Now that Dong Fang Chong Fan is dead, there might not be any Gu immortals who can deduce Brother Fang's identity. Mo Tan Sang said. It is hard to say, some 1,000-year-old monsters or some wisdom path Gu immortals might exist. Fang Yuan shook his head, sighing. Oh. Lad, aren't you a wisdom path Gu immortal? If you can deduce so many immortal Gu recipes, your wisdom path attainment must be very high, you should use your own wisdom path methods to prevent others from deducing you. I remember that many wisdom path Gu immortals have done that before. Langya Land Spirit asked. Fang Yuan laughed bitterly in his heart. How could he be a wisdom path Gu immortal? He was only using the might of the rank 9 wisdom Gu to impersonate as one, shamelessly claiming credit for it. Thus, he said, my wisdom path methods are very heavily skewed towards deducing Gu recipes, they are very poor in other aspects. Furthermore, Ma Hongyun and Zhao Yenyun are both living eyewitnesses, they had experienced the situation in Imperial Court Blessed Land. I am afraid my current appearance has been found out by Qin Baisheng already. Speaking of Qin Baisheng, Mo Tan Sang's eyes shone, he praised, this person is quite impressive. I had thought that he was only strong in battle strength, but to think he was very wise as well. He captured Man Zhao, obtaining the core of the luck path true inheritance. Originally, Northern Plains Gu immortals were going to attack and exterminate him together. But during this month's time in Northern Plains, he recruited allies, giving up some benefits and persuading Fairy Li Shan to come out and use Mountain Pledge Gu, to forcefully gather and unite a bunch of lone cultivators, even Yi Lui tribe was convinced by him. Originally, there was a huge battle ahead, but because of his actions, the battle flopped. He even is going to hold a huge auction in his blessed land, purposely selling the core immortal Gu of the luck path true inheritance. He even will be placing Ma and Zhao as commodities for sale. After saying that, Mo Tan Sang looked at Fang Yuan deeply in the eye. He knew that Fairy Li Shan and Fang Yuan had a deep relationship. Back then, when Fang Yuan borrowed the desolate beasts from Langya Land's spirit, he was present. Langya Land's spirit rejected him outright, having a firm attitude. After all, the desolate beasts were an important defense of Langya blessed land. If Fang Yuan had ill intentions, and was in cahoots with the group that attacked the blessed land, Langya Land's spirit would be in danger. But out of his expectations, Fang Yuan took out Mountain Pledge Gu. Using this Gu to make a vow, Langya Land's spirit's worries were dispelled. Later, he used man as before and landscape as before, these two immortal Gu, to attract Langya Land's spirit and strike at his weakness. After all, Langya Land's spirit had offered Tai Bai Yunxing 5 immortal essence stones just to research landscape as before in the past. Langya Land's spirit was moved by the two immortal Gu, and after being provoked by Fang Yuan's words, he lent 8 desolate beasts to him. Qin Bai Sheng knows how to give in at the right time, he can adapt to circumstances and has amazing methods. He is truly skilled in both brains and brawn, one can't help but admire him. Fang Yuan said lightly, before changing the subjecting and asking the land spirit, do you have any leads on the White Lotus giant silkworm Gu? Fang Yuan's cleansed soul immortal Gu has not been fed. After this period of time, it became even weaker. But to feed cleansed soul immortal Gu, he needed the flesh of the White Lotus giant silkworm Gu. Earlier, Fang Yuan had asked Langya Land's spirit, but Langya Land's spirit did not have the recipe of the White Lotus giant silkworm Gu, or even any remnant recipes of it. Thus, he could only ask for a lead, not raising any talk of the Gu recipe. Langya Land's spirit shook his head, lad, this White Lotus giant silkworm Gu was created by spectral soul demon Venerable. My main body had lived through the eras of thieving heaven and giant sun before dying. Spectral soul demon Venerable only rose up after giant sun immortal Venerable. By that time, I was already confined inside this blessed land. How could I have any leads? But, I do have an incredible transformation path killer move here. This killer move originated from thieving heaven demon Venerable. When he was young, he used this set of Gu worms to hide his appearance and evade his enemies when they chased him. The effect was great. With this killer move, you will be able to change your appearance and aura, to conceal your identity. Even if Gu immortals manage to deduce your identity, you might be able to deny it in person and claim that their deduction was wrong, successfully hoodwinking them. Chapter 709, Familiar Face. Oh. As it involved thieving heaven demon Venerable, Fang Yuan's interest was roused. Is it the legendary, familiar face? In Gu master history, there were many interesting records about the immortal killer move, familiar face. All. Test NOV. L. On novel. N/C. M. Thieving heaven demon Venerable had once relied on familiar face to transform into all sorts of appearances. He had once scammed a rank 8 Gu immortal, Deng Zui Yen, while he himself had rank 6 cultivation, causing Deng Zui Yen to think that he was his best friend, Wan Cheizhen. In the end, Deng Zui Yen allowed the thief into his house, and thieving heaven demon Venerable used the opportunity to steal a lot of treasures in his blessed land. After the incident, Deng Zui Yen was angered to the point of spitting out blood. He found Wan Cheizhen and engaged in a fierce battle. It was an extremely heated match. Wan Cheizhen was very puzzled. He tried to explain himself but it was not working. In the end, he took a risk and stopped defending him, letting Deng Zui Yen deal 3 blows to him. After 3 blows, Wan Cheizhen was on the verge of death. He finally managed to convince Deng Zui Yen of their friendship. Deng Zuoyan felt deep regret. He tried to heal Wan Cheizhen regardless of the consequences. After he found out the truth, he saw thieving heaven demon Venerable as his most hated enemy and one that he must kill. Wan Cheizhen's deep injuries could not heal, and seeing that Deng Zuoyan was about to face a tribulation, he did not want to be a burden to his friend and left secretly. But to think that thieving heaven demon Venerable had perfect timing, he disguised as Wan Cheizhen and lied to Deng Zuoyan, lying in bed and pretending to be ill, extorting countless cultivation resources from him. After that, thieving heaven demon Venerable escaped scot-free. Deng Zuoyan lost a huge amount of his foundation. He died during his heavenly tribulation and earthly calamity not long after. Wan Cheizhen heard that his friend had died and vomited blood from anger. His weak body that was heavily injured finally gave in and he died several days later. This was the most illustrious achievement of the immortal killer move, Familiar Face. It was not an offensive killer move, but it indirectly took the lives of 2 rank 8 Gu immortals. In history, other than this incredible account, there were also countless incidents where thieving heaven demon Venerable used this move to pretend to be a weakling to catch people off guard, or scammed people by pretending to be an expert. He also transformed into a snowman and caused trouble in an Inkman city, resulting in a huge battle between the snowmen and the Inkmen. Xianxia land spirit stared at Fang Yuan, shaking his head. Familiar Face. You are really daring. That is an immortal killer move. The core Gu is the legendary attitude Gu. Even if I give it to you, you will not be able to use it. But this killer move of mine has a huge relationship with Familiar Face. It can be said to be the former version of it. This is a mortal killer move and is suitable for you to use. Oh. Bright light shined in Fang Yuan's eyes. Seeing that he had drawn out Fang Yuan's interest, Xianxia land spirit chuckled as he continued, this killer move is called Unfamiliar Face. But if you want it, you will need to do me a favor. Fang Yuan knew that there was no free lunch in this world. He nodded, say it. Xianxia land spirit said his plan immediately. My 12 cloud buildings all had one desolate beast inside each in the past. But because of the attacks of the Gu immortals from the mysterious force, 2 of them died and 1 died after succumbing to injuries. Now, I only have 9 left. If you can enslave a desolate beast with outstanding battle strength for me, not only will I pay you immortal essence stones based on market rates, I will also give you this mortal killer move, Unfamiliar Face. Fang Yuan was overjoyed deep inside. After making many transactions with Xianxia land spirit over the immortal Gu remnant recipes, and using the mountain pledge Gu to dispel any suspicions, along with returning the desolate beasts, he had finally improved his relationship with Xianxia land spirit. In the past, Xianxia land spirit would not ask Fang Yuan for such a matter. Fang Yuan thought about it and agreed. Next, he obtained 3 new immortal Gu remnant recipes from Xianxia land spirit. After saying goodbye, he went back to Hu immortal blessed land. Junior brother, you are back. Was this trip successful? Tai Bai Yunsheng was inside Hu immortal blessed land. Now, with the 8 desolate beasts already returned, it was impossible for He Lulan and Fairy Li Shan to stay in Hu immortal blessed land. When Fang Yuan went to Xianxia blessed land, Tai Bai Yunsheng was the only Gu immortal left to defend it. It was rather fruitful. Fang Yuan said, returning landscape as before Gu and man as before Gu to Tai Bai Yunsheng. Shark demon is calling me urgently, I have to go to Eastern Sea now. Tai Bai Yunsheng took the 2 Gu and rushed over without examining them. Fang Yuan did not obstruct him, he only told him to be careful. Now that he was finally alone, it was time to plan what to do for the future. After resolving the huge crisis of Immortal Crane sect attacking Hu immortal blessed land, I have finally stabilized the situation. I have entered the Righteous Path faction using the status of a subsidiary force. Now that I can sell Guts Gu, I can intervene slightly in Central Continent's matters now. In the past, Fang Yuan was immortal. he did not even have the qualifications to speak to Gu immortals as equals. Although he had Hu immortal blessed land, he was like a child walking into a bandit's den holding primeval stones. Once the bandits saw Feng Yuan, they would only think of how to take Hu immortal blessed land for themselves. Now that Feng Yuan was an immortal zombie, he finally was qualified. After gathering his strength and showing the mysterious force behind him, he had finally intimidated Immortal Crane's sect and the other forces. Using the Daoist Gu transaction to form an economic connection between them, the child had now grown into a young man. Seeing a bandit, he scattered some primeval stones to them. The bandits want to rob him, but they are afraid of a counterattack from the young man that would cause them to suffer greater losses, thus, they took the primeval stones to temporarily satisfy themselves. Furthermore, these bandits themselves are wary of each other and restrict themselves, their attention is placed on many other things. The young man is temporarily safe in this den. But Feng Yuan was aware that when the Daoist Gu transactions become bigger, and the benefits become larger, there would be even greater pressure on him, as more people would want to snatch it from him. Especially during the 5 regions chaotic war, all of the forces would not let go of something that could raise their strength. Although the young man gave out some primeval stones and satisfied the bandits temporarily, as his wealth grows, these bandits were bound to engage in another attempt of robbery soon. Thus, Feng Yuan lowered his head and became a subsidiary of Immortal Crane's sect in name. This way, the young man was now a young bandit. These bandits could not rob each other, they had to follow the rules. But rules were just formless restrictions. As time passed, as the profits grew, they would have less effect. After all, this young bandit was not as powerful as he had displayed himself to be. For Gu immortals, 8 desolate beasts, this is just a facade that I put up by borrowing the strength of others. The Snowy Mountain alliance I have with He Lu Lan has a time limit. Langyip blessed land is facing strong enemies, it can hardly protect itself. I cannot bring out the 8 desolate beasts anytime I wish. Even though we made Immortal Crane's sect retreat and have set up transactions with the 10 great ancient sects, since I have now appeared in the open, they will definitely use all sorts of methods to investigate me. They have not struck yet because they are not sure of my background at this point. One they know, they will strike again. Feng Yuan considered. Using an analogy, when Feng Yuan first obtained Hu immortal blessed land, the situation was like a torrential rainstorm with thunder and lightning. It was vicious weather and only by taking a fatal risk could he have a chance of survival. After Feng Yuan's trip to Northern Plains, he became an immortal zombie. When he returned to Hu immortal blessed land, the situation was like a sky with dark clouds covering him, and strong winds blowing. The future was grim. Only by plotting carefully, taking every step vigilantly, and grabbing onto every opportunity, could he climb out of the swamp slowly and with much difficulty. After Feng Yuan repelled Immortal Crane's sect and started selling Daoist Gu, the fierce winds had disappeared, and the dark clouds had thinned, a hole was exposed and the blue sky could be seen. The future was now bright and hopeful, but the dark clouds were still looming. If he was careless, they would cover the sky again, with lightning and rain pouring. It was like a person had just escaped from a swamp. He was standing at the edge of the swamp, finally safe for the time being. If he took a step back, Feng Yuan would fall into the swamp again. If he wanted to get out, he would need to struggle intensely, and his luck would matter greatly. If he moved forward, Feng Yuan would become more stable, and he would finally get back onto a wide and large track. Even if there were thorns along the way, it would not be like before, when he was struggling between life and death, and every step could lead to a fatal disaster. The following period of time is a time of peace that I have obtained with much difficulty. I need to advance forward, accumulating my foundation and raising my cultivation. I have to become stronger, until none of the forces around me dare to have any ill intentions against me. Feng Yuan thought about it carefully. There were several huge problems in front of him. The first question facing him now was the feeding of Immortal Gu. Cleanse Soul Immortal Gu was the most urgent one. Xianxia Land Spirit and Fairy Lishan did not have any leads to the White Lotus giant Silkworm Gu. Even though he could buy some and treasure Yellow Heaven for a high price, it could only sustain cleanse soul Immortal Gu's life and not let it die of hunger. To feed it till it was full, he needed 10,000 White Lotus giant Silkworm Gu. This Gu was in small quantity even for Gu immortals who collected them. Unless Fang Yuan got the Gu recipe and refined it in bulk, he could not solve the issue completely. Looking at his other immortal Gu, feeding them was still a huge problem. Although he got through it this time, the next round of feeding would be a problem again. The six-headed snake's bones had turned into black blood and were fed to Calamity beckoning immortal Gu. Delight in Water and Mountain immortal Gu's feeding problem had never been resolved. It was just that Imo Yao's will had fed it earlier, thus there were no issues yet. Worldly Wave Trace Gu needed tens of thousands of underworld jellyfish and thousands of deep-sea lightning eels. Although the former was in huge quantity, it could be bought easily using immortal essence stones. But the latter was rare in the market. If not for Tai Bai Yunxing encountering Shark Demon and putting his own life at risk, he would not have gotten the required amount. Rising Azure Cloud was in Xianxia Land Spirit's hands, it need not be considered for now. Connect Luck Immortal Gu needs 5,000 kilograms of sand gull soil. Looking at the condition of the worldly sand gull's dead egg, it could produce another 15,000 kilograms, which was 3 feeding sessions. The feeding of woman's heart was troublesome. After all, mass killing of mortals would attract the attack of righteous path Gu immortals. After all, now was not the 5 regions chaotic war yet. Within the 5 regions, the righteous path suppressed the demonic path, order was abundant in society. Although Fang Yuan had many immortal essence stones now, the feeding of immortal Gu could not be resolved simply by having immortal essence stones. Generally, in most cases, the feeding of immortal Gu was usually connected to the cultivation path of the Gu immortal themselves, and their blessed land. Chapter 7:10, Crossing the Regional Wall. For instance, a water path Gu immortal's blessed land would be in the form of a sea. After obtaining worldly wave trace Gu, the Gu immortal would raise underworld jellyfish, deep-sea lightning eels and so on inside their blessed land. Thus, the Gu immortal could be self-sufficient, by drawing materials from their own blessed land to feed the immortal Gu worldly wave trace. Another example was Tai Bai Yunxing's 2 immortal Gu. He could obtain food for them by managing his own blessed land. He Lu Land's blessed land contained large numbers of heavy metal ores. These heavy metals were strength Qi immortal Gu's food. However, Fang Yuan's situation was different from theirs. Their immortal Gu were mostly obtained by refining vital Gu and core Gu when advancing to Gu immortal, and were integrated with their path. Fang Yuan's immortal Gu were mostly obtained from scheming. His vital Gu was Spring-Autumn Cicada, but he had no time path inheritance, and what he currently practiced was strength path. Moreover, Fang Yuan's immortal Gu were extremely disordered, involving time path, space path, water path, wisdom path and other paths. The most crucial point was that Fang Yuan's blessed land was dead. His immortal aperture had turned into a dead aperture, and whatever he placed in there would die. It could neither be managed nor developed like a normal blessed land, nor could it provide convenience in feeding immortal Gu, and most importantly it could not produce immortal essence. Thus, there was a much heavier burden on immortal essence stones. Fang Yuan not only had to use his immortal essence stones for transactions, but also turn a part of them into green grape immortal essence, and furthermore bear the costs for feeding immortal Gu. The main reason for Fang Yuan almost becoming bankrupt after the battle with He Qing was this. Thus the second problem in front of Fang Yuan was his immortal aperture. The immortal aperture was already dead, his cultivation had stagnated. The blessed land was involved in many aspects of the Gu immortal's cultivation, therefore this was a great burden to Fang Yuan. The day Fang Yuan truly got rid of his immortal zombie body would be the day he can formally start his Gu immortal cultivation. However, getting rid of the immortal zombie body and returning to his human body meant Fang Yuan would not be able to step into the wisdom light halo, this was also a problem. As for the final important problem, it was battle strength. Currently, cleansed soul Immortal Gu was weak from hunger and was too risky to use. Fang Yuan's trump card, the Immortal Killer move Myriad Self, also could not be used. Fang Yuan's battle strength had fallen as a result. Whether it was confronting Central Continent's 10 great ancient sects in the days to come, dealing with the pursuit of Northern Plains Gu immortals, seizing Dong Fang Chang Fan's wisdom path inheritance, helping Langya land spirit to capture a desolate beast, seeking the thieving heaven inheritance pertaining to Luopa Valley, taking Immortal Gu Dark Limit from Fairy Xianxia, all of these required powerful battle strength. There are mainly 4 aspects that influence a Gu Immortal's battle strength. The Gu Immortal's own battle attainment, Immortal Gu, killer moves and Immortal Essence. With the Guts Gu business now, I don't lack Immortal Essence for the moment. A Gu Immortal's battle attainment is formed from constant accumulation of their foundation over time and cannot be raised in a short period. In the Immortal Gu aspect, the Blood Deity Remnant recipe is enough to deduce the complete Blood Deity Immortal Gu recipe, but my wealth right now is still quite far from reaching the standard of refining Immortal Gu. Feng Yuan thought it over. Even if he could refine Blood Deity, he did not want to do so. Blood Path had been affiliated with the demonic path since long ago. Even the 10 great ancient sects had to research Blood Path in secret and did not dare to publicly announce it. Heavenly Court even had the Demon Judgment Board, and Feng Yuan did not want to put his name there this early. Moreover, almost all the Immortal Gu in Feng Yuan's hands were in a bad state from hunger. The burden of feeding was too heavy and Feng Yuan lacked confidence in managing it if a new Immortal Gu was added on top of that. Therefore, the only method Feng Yuan could use to raise his battle strength quickly was through killer moves. The killer move aspect involved both Immortal Killer moves and Mortal Killer moves. I have sufficient Immortal Essence stones, my disposable income is much higher than in the past. Not only can I purchase a lot of good Mortal Killer moves, but I also can continuously experiment, deduce and reproduce some powerful killer moves from my past life. Having thought things through, Feng Yuan immediately started with the task. Central Continent. With Feng Gu as the leader, a group of Gu Immortals were standing in front of an enormous light wall. The light wall was incomparably tall, connecting the sky and ground. The white light had condensed into a solid and formed a wall. Within it flickered golden light which was full of vigor and majesty. This was Central Continent's membrane, known as the Saint Regional Wall. The world of Gu Masters had 5 large regions: Central Continent, Southern Border, Eastern Sea, Western Desert and Northern Plains. Each was covered with a layer of membrane forming the boundaries of heaven and earth, mutually isolating each other. Old Oracle, what is the result of your calculation this time? Old Lord Kenyang asked a young-looking Gu Immortal in the group. The young-looking Gu Immortal slowly opened his eyes. They were filled with clouds and mist and constantly transforming. A long while later, the clouds and mist dispersed and he returned to having ordinary white eyes with black pupils. The young-looking Gu Immortal spoke with a slightly happy tone. It can be done. This part of the regional wall is rather weak. It is the 3rd weak spot we have found over these last days. But compared to the first and the second, this is more stable. I suggest we use this to cut open an entrance and cross the regional wall to Northern Plains. Ha, good, we have searched close to 1,000 areas and finally found an ideal weak spot. Old Man Tian Long laughed loudly. Fairy Ling Mei let out a breath of cloudy air and said with a sigh, we have searched for so many days before finally getting a good result. It was really not easy. We have already wasted a lot of time, let's begin. Feng Gu said briefly, who goes first? Fairy Ao Shui and Fairy Ling Mei glanced at each other, then stood up together, speaking in unison, this time, let our heaven's envy manner take the lead. With that statement, the two exerted strength and activated an immortal killer move together, called Peerless Crescent Moon Slash. This killer move's core was the rank 7 Crescent Moon Immortal Gu, with 2 rank 6 Immortal Gu as support. The immortal essence required to activate this immortal killer move was extremely high and it also burdened the mind significantly. Just one Gu Immortal could not display its might, 2 Gu Immortals must activate it together. The immortal killer move was activated, instantly forming a blue crescent moon. The crescent moon was not large and was only the size of a water jar, but it had condensed into solid form and was sparkling like a magnificent piece of artwork. Only the terrifying aura it leaked out occasionally would let one know that it was not harmless like its appearance showed. The surrounding Gu immortals distanced themselves far away from Ao Shui and Ling Mei. After accumulating enough power, the two fairies gave soft cries and released the blue crescent moon. The crescent moon flew extremely quick and silently, shining with gentle moonlight. The blue crescent moon slashed the Saint regional wall and immediately cut open a path about 76 steps in length. Worthy of being a well-known killer move of Heaven's Envy manner, it directly cut open a distance of 76 steps, remarkable. Gu Immortal Chen Jin Qi exclaimed in admiration. Feng Jiu Gu led the way with the other Gu immortals behind him and entered the Saint regional wall. The moment they stepped into the Saint regional wall, many Gu immortals' expressions changed slightly. Their bodies became heavier, their thoughts moved more slowly, and even the immortal aperture inside them gradually started to tremor. Quick, we need to move faster. Feng Jiu Gu hastened. They had walked 74 steps before they could not walk any further. In this short period of time, the Saint regional wall had already started to rapidly heal. The path of 76 steps in depth had already shortened by 2 steps. Old Lord Kenyang stood up. Next, let this old man give it a try. He took out an immortal Gu. This immortal Gu resembled a mostly burnt-out candle with a small amount of candlelight burning at the top. Old Lord Kenyang softly blew at the candlelight. The candlelight shook, and following the direction of Old Lord Kenyang's breath, it let out countless glittering light spots. The light spots struck the white gold Saint regional wall. The regional wall melted like snow as it rapidly dissolved and formed a 63 steps passage. Everyone quickly moved ahead. At the end of the passage, Old Man Tian Long stood up and activated an immortal Gu, opening a 67 steps passage. All the Gu immortals took turns in using their immortal Gu or immortal killer moves to open the passage deeper into the Saint regional wall. The deeper they went, the greater the pressure on them was, even turning into a giant force that dragged them backwards, seemingly as if this world did not want them to leave Central Continent. The thoughts in their minds also kept on moving increasingly slowly, which caused the Gu immortals to have extreme difficulty in activating their immortal killer moves. As a wisdom path Gu immortal, Old Oracle had no choice but to use all sorts of methods and even immortal killer moves to reinforce the other Gu immortals' minds. But in spite of this, Ao Shui and Ling Mei, these two fairies could not activate Peerless Crescent Moon / anymore. The most crucial point was the immortal apertures in their bodies. The deeper they went, the greater the intensity of the tremors in their immortal apertures. The earth within their blessed lands cracked, boulders started falling down, and countless life forms within died pitifully. These Gu immortals came from the 10 great ancient sects. They were famous experts with outstanding battle strength. However, several hundred steps later, most turned pale, some with weaker cultivation even started trembling slightly. 1,000 steps later, most of the Gu immortals were covered with sweat, some were deathly pale. Ao Shui and Ling Mei were walking while supporting each other. Only Feng Jiu Gu alone was still walking ahead upright. His expression was normal. Every time he made a move, they were all immortal killer moves, cutting open passages longer than 100 steps. After walking for over 3,000 steps, there was much thinner white gold light in front. Instead a trace of green was vaguely revealed. Old Oracle, your deduction was correct. This is indeed a weak area of Saint Regional Wall. We reached here after only walking over 3,000 steps. Someone immediately praised. Beyond Saint Regional Wall is Northern Plains Licorice Regional Wall. Let's speed up and break through it in one move. Old Lord Kenyang attempted to raise the morale while gasping for breath. The young-looking Gu immortal Old Oracle, however, was somewhat worried. My ability is limited, I could only deduce Saint Regional Wall. Hopefully this area of Licorice Regional Wall is not too thick. After around 8 minutes, the Gu immortals were out of Saint Regional Wall and entered into Licorice Regional Wall. This regional wall was quite different from Saint Regional Wall. The Gu immortals felt an enormous formless force pushing at them and constantly repelling them. The intensity of the tremors of their immortal apertures increased further, the losses causing great heartache to many Gu immortals. I hope we can subdue 1 or 2 immortal Gu in this trip to Northern Plains, otherwise the losses would be too huge. Old man Tian Long said. Sigh, I had passed the regional wall to Northern Plains when I was younger, but back then the whole process only took about 5 minutes of time and was very easy. Gu immortal Hong Chi Ming sighed deeply. When he had crossed the regional wall back then, he had only been a rank 4 Gu master. As one's cultivation became higher, the difficulty in traversing regional walls would become increasingly difficult. After a long time, this group of Gu immortals had no choice but to stop. They were in Licorice Regional Wall and everywhere around them was filled with green fog. Grass was growing wildly in the fog and was constantly twining and twisting like a sea of snakes or hair, blocking their paths. Feng Jiuji's body was dripping with sweat and his lips were pale. This won't do, this part of Licorice Regional Wall is extremely firm, we need to change to another direction even if we have to walk more. Everyone nodded, approving of Feng Jiuji's resoluteness. Old Oracle began to deduce, and in this period of time, the regional wall was constantly recovering, making the Gu immortals retreat further. This way. Finally, Old Oracle calculated a direction. The Gu immortals changed their direction and after suffering bitterly for a day and a night, they passed the Licorice Regional Wall and entered Northern Plains. Rest and reorganize for 3 days, we will talk after that. Feng Gu exhaustedly said. Among the whole group, only he was able to barely stand while the others fell down unsteadily to the ground like piles of mud, not wanting to even budge anymore.